Well, good evening, everyone, and I would like to call to order this Anoka-Hennepin School Board work session for today, March 9th, 2026. Welcome those who are in attendance with us and those who are joining us live stream as we work together to effectively educate every student for success. Our first item on our agenda this evening is the approval of the board agenda. Is there a motion to approve the board agenda as presented?
So moved.
We have a motion from Director Simon. Is there a second? We have a second from Director Audette. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. With 6 in favor and 0 opposed, the agenda is approved. Members, the next item on our agenda. The next item on our agenda is item 3, the consent agenda, and as normal, members can remove items for separate consideration and discussion if that's their desire. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
We have a motion from Director Duchesne. Is there a second?
Second.
With a second from Director Simon, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. With 6 in favor and 0 opposed, our consent agenda is approved. Tonight at our work session, we are now to item 4, and we will begin with 4A, our Learning and Achievement K-12 Literacy Update. I want to welcome Sarah Hunter this evening. She is our Executive Director of Learning and Achievement. We're looking forward to this discussion. Ms. Hunter?
I have the privilege of sharing a mid-year update on our implementation specifically of CKLA, our knowledge building curriculum in K-5, in addition to providing some context around the support that our teachers and principals will have moving into next school year to support as we move into phase 2 of the READ Act. All right, so as you all know, and I very much appreciate the continued focus from our board on ensuring that all students have access to high quality literacy, and it is my goal to provide to you real-time updates right now around knowledge building curriculum in terms of how we are seeking to improve literacy at all grades. Tonight, I will walk through a high-level summary of our CKLA site visits. I'll talk a little bit about what those looked like. I'm going to present briefly some K-8 FastBridge data that mainly at this point serves as a baseline, as that assessment is new to us in many of our grade levels at the upper end of that assessment this year. So we'll be looking to use this year as a baseline to show improvement both in terms of growth and proficiency into next school year. Walk through the K-12 literacy coaching structure, and then present essentially what the bones of an accountability and evaluation structure will look like that we plan to build out with stakeholder input from our elementary, middle, and high school leadership teams. All right, so our CKLA site visits. The goal was that every K-5 teacher, so not just, literacy specialists, not just principals, but every teacher in all of our schools from grades kindergarten through 5th grade would engage in one of the 3 or more than one of the 3 options presented to them. So a modeling session, so modeling a lesson, observation with feedback, so them actually leading a lesson themselves and then receiving feedback, or what many of our schools chose for most of their grade levels was a PLC time for the entire team, where a CKLA coach came in to support the site all day long. So each of our 25 schools got a full day with a CKLA coach and then either a member of my team or myself alongside that coach, so that we were able to gather representative data from each of the 25 buildings at every grade level to be able to present to you this evening. But I would offer more importantly, though I consider being able to present to the board important, even more importantly to inform how our teachers shift their instruction. So I'll give you a high-level overview, and then what we're doing on Wednesday with our principals this week, our elementary principals, is digging much more deeply into the data, both at their schools and then talking about next steps. So when I wanted to sort of center us in what part of the important fundamentals of reading was this site visit about. So Amplify CKLA is our knowledge building curriculum. We pair that with a foundational skills curriculum, either Bridge to Read in grades K through 3 or functional morphology in 4-5. These site visits were really specifically aimed at looking at how CKLA is being used in our classrooms and how to improve student outcomes. And that falls in the top part of Scarborough's reading rope, so the different components at the top there in language comprehension. The next slide here shows similar, there's also a writing rope. So similarly, and our CKLA includes both reading and writing components, and writing is actually one of the themes that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes here. So just wanted to sort of put those in context. So I would say this week, the week of CKLA site visits, was far and away my favorite week of the year thus far, because I had the great opportunity to be in multiple buildings all day long, seeing teachers in every grade level in each of the buildings that I was in. And I got to hear both amazing things that are happening as a result of our new curricular resources, and again, maybe more importantly for me in my role, I was able to hear the things that teachers either need more of, need more guidance around, and the additional support that my team will be providing. So I'm going to talk about the high-level positive things first, of which this is a small subset, but they're the highest level themes. Many of our teachers are sharing that students are really excited about the content they're learning. So given that one of the most important things we know based on the science of reading is that students need to be engaging in learning that is centered in all of the sort of different content areas that they will end up learning in upper level courses, right? Like, so they're learning about science right starting in kindergarten, right? In units that are thematic and age appropriate. We also heard that some students are asking parents to get books that are about a specific topic, that the units are all in CKLA around really strong themes that are both nonfiction and fiction in nature, so there's a good balance. And just again, there was one student who shared that their entire list of gifts that they wanted for their birthday was like books about this new topic that they're obsessed about because that was what they learned in class. So really one of the things we most wanted to hear was that students are engaging in knowledge building, right? So that they're prepared for success later. There's also a much more rich vocabulary routine that is embedded in this curriculum. So one of the other positive themes that teachers were saying, and again, this is comparing year over year, right? So many of our teachers have been teaching students for years, if not decades, as they're seeing students use the language that's coming out of their texts across the rest of the day, right? So words are showing up that are coming from CKLA and they're using them throughout the day. That's of course supported by a morphology, et cetera, from our foundational curriculums as well. Students are also bringing words home and breaking them apart. I've even heard that in CCAC. There are parents who are part of that committee who talk about that their children are bringing home words and then breaking them apart and telling them about the pieces of the words. So the combination of our foundational skills and knowledge building curriculum is showing up at home, and that homeschool connection is really important. We're seeing higher quality writing. There are many more places in the curriculum where students are given the opportunity to write. So they start with an early draft, right, ideas, and then you see it sort of cycle in throughout each of the units. And so teachers are seeing success in that. They're also asking for more support in, so if we think about our students in grades, say 4 and 5, the curriculum assumes they have had all of this content knowledge built up in the grades prior. So they're entering their classrooms with a high expectation for content knowledge and practice with reading and writing, et cetera. So one of the things we'll be doing to support our teachers is how do we bridge that gap when there is content that, they didn't have the opportunity to engage in, whereas our kindergarten teachers are the only ones that are getting that first year in. We're super excited for when our students have moved through the system and have been in this curriculum for their whole years, or elementary years. We're continuing to see our teachers make instructional shifts related to their science of reading training. So that's one of the things that showed up. You're hearing in these PLCs that we were in, teachers talking about the training that they had now matches with the curricular resources that are in front of them, which was the goal of this board, right? Once our teachers were done with their science of reading training. And then a backwards planning tool that we taught teachers at the beginning of the school year called bookend planning, starting with your standards and the assessment at the end of the unit and working backwards from there in terms of what your students know and need to learn. We're seeing success in places where that practice is happening every unit. So again, that is a brief summary of what we saw that were really positive, high-level themes. I wanted to make sure that both the public and you all are aware that principals haven't had the opportunity to be together yet after their CKLA site visits. So I don't have principal voice in these slides, but I do have teacher voice, right? So the summary that I just shared was from our teachers in our buildings. But principals have the opportunity to meet and discuss what they see in their buildings, whether the themes make sense to them from what they're seeing in their buildings and what support they need, and that's this Wednesday. We will also, of course, be partnering with our literacy specialists in our elementary schools. Each school had like after visit summary that went from the coach and the district person, whether it was me or a member of my team, that summarized what we heard throughout the course of the day and then the resources that their teachers had an opportunity to engage in. The third bullet here speaks to, we're going to update we have a CKLA landing page. We'll be updating it with the additional resources that our teachers highlighted as things that they really wish they had known about earlier in the year, which is where I want to sort of pause and acknowledge. Our teachers have had a really heavy lift in elementary this year, just in terms of engaging in, each of them are engaging in 2 new curricula, unless they were a pilot site. And they're needing to make a lot of instructional decisions using materials that are new to them, right? Not familiar. So one of the things we heard is when the coach would bring up a resource and they'd be like, oh my, that's amazing, right? Like, I wish I had that. In many cases, that was likely a part of the training in July or August. But all of us know, if you've been in a classroom, when you get one day PD and you don't have your students yet and you haven't unboxed the curriculum, you haven't been teaching it for a bit, you don't know what you don't know yet, right? So there are resources that might not have shown up as like the really important resource that are now. So we're kind of at that just in time, right? Supporting our teachers now that they've engaged in the curriculum long enough to know what they need. Okay, so our teachers can't do it alone. Neither can our literacy specialists, nor our principals, and certainly not my team, which is several steps away from students. So I want to show what our support structure looks like. So this should look familiar. I presented on this slide with a slight change when I think it was in September that I last presented to the board like a large literacy update. And so we have literacy specialists across our system. I'll dig deeper into those in a little bit. I have 2 members of my team, plus a third member who serves as our local literacy lead who support K-5 literacy. We have principals and assistant principals that are instructional leaders in their buildings. And then next month, I'll speak more to what our intervention teachers support. So tonight, I want to sort of frame as this is a tier 1 instruction presentation, whereas next month when you will have CAPTI data, and then I want to talk about like what are those folks doing that are serving students who need that extra scoop. Tonight is mainly tier 1, what all students should receive. So the last one at the bottom, the K-12 literacy implementation team, At the close of this presentation, what I am hopeful to do is the next few days, I have the opportunity to be in front of our elementary, middle, and high school principals. And we want to ensure that there are members from each of those groups that serve on a K-12 literacy implementation team, as we acknowledge there are students in grades 6 through 12 who our system has not given them all that they need in terms of literacy at grade level. We want to make sure that that team supports the structures like improving our reading intervention courses at the 6-12 level so that all students can read at grade level. All right, our goal, the board's goal of all students having literacy success, that team is sort of key, and I'd like them to be a part of the developing of our evaluation metrics. All right, so I had said I would talk a little bit more about literacy coaches. And I do want to speak to the asterisk as well. So at the elementary level, we have historically had literacy specialists and math specialists in some amount in each of our buildings. So this coming year, so this slide speaks to the staffing model for next school year. There are 43.32 FTE that are at the elementary level where schools were asked to start with funding a literacy specialist, and then of the additional FTE that they got in their building, match their building's needs. So that might be a literacy specialist and a math specialist. In some cases, it might be multiple literacy specialists and a math specialist, however that FTE worked out at their site. But there will be at least 25 folks across the elementary schools that we'll be able to depend on to support literacy implementation next school year. New for next year, we will have one literacy specialist at each of our middle schools and our high schools. And those folks will become now a part of, the way that I see this group is like, this is our K-12 literacy specialist group. We need our elementary literacy specialists who've been doing this work for years to be able to inform what is coming up into our middle schools, so that 5th to 6th grade transition is important. And then the whole team will be working on supporting improving literacy across the system in the 26-27 school year. So what do? At the elementary level, they played a huge role in the CKLA site visits, right? They support teachers in implementing knowledge building curriculum, which in elementary is CKLA. They're also supporting, so these folks have a big job too, all of their teachers teaching Bridge to Read and functional morphology across the building. They have been for years now applying their Read Act training to coach and support our elementary teachers. They, of course, use data to inform instruction. The new data that they are digging into right now is our CAPTI data, which you'll get to see next month as well. And then because of that, they also help to coordinate those Tier 2 supports, right? So making sure that students who need more than Tier 1 get what they need. And then they support professional learning in their buildings, and they also provide professional learning on days like our teacher PD days, right? They are excellent practitioners in what they do, and they often train teachers on those days as well. So there's a slight difference when we go to the 6-12 group. So next year is when the READ Act moves up to secondary ELA. So our ELA teachers will be getting their first opportunity to be a part of READ Act training. Our 6-12 literacy specialists will be their site's essentially trainer for those teachers, and then any additional teachers. Every year we have folks who come into our system who didn't have training before they arrived. So they will land in a cohort at each of our 6-12 sites next year. And then the other difference at the 6-12 level is we're building disciplinary literacy, right? Across content areas, we need our secondary teachers to be able to use what we know now about students' reading ability from CAPTI to inform how to differentiate core instruction for them. And then they continue to do many of the same things as our elementary literacy specialists. That group will convene for the first time as a whole group sometime later this spring in order to make sure they are ready and on board before the school year starts. All right, so all that I have shared thus far has been predominantly teacher-facing. So I want to speak to how are our students doing and what does our baseline data look like right now, such that you can see, where we are and where we'd like to go. So FastBridge Early Reading is an assessment that we have given for years, right? So this is an assessment that is given in both kindergarten and first grade 3 times a year. And there are different subtests there are some subtests that are given at the beginning of the year in the fall data. Some of them shift for winter and then spring. And for each of these 2 assessments I'll talk about tonight, there is a moving target, right? We expect that students grow from fall to winter and then winter to spring. So we want to see accelerated growth, right? So what you'll see on the left side of this slide in the fall are kindergarten students were coming in with letter sounds a little bit higher in the fall than we had seen in the past. And we see, again, a slight increase, right, year over year in the winter. So we'll be hoping to see that continue to go up in the spring for our kindergarten students. In first grade, when you look at the fall, from last year to this year, or actually over the last number of years, you're seeing that sort of gradual trend up, which is great news. We did see that in the fall, this is different cohorts. So, right, last year's first graders compared to this year's fourth graders were stable. So we were at 45% who came in proficient. But we did see a slight decrease in winter. So first grade, and this is on a nonsense words assessment, this is something that my team is looking into, like where are there places where we are seeing increases in nonsense words? What are the, like habits and attributes of buildings that have an increase? And then our hope is to build that out across the system. And this data will be something I'll be looking forward to seeing in the spring to see if we're able to bounce back up. Similarly, we give the A reading assessment for students in grades 2 through 8. So you're seeing in 4th through 8th, this is the first year, so we don't have anything to compare it to. And the other thing that I'll note, if you look at the percentiles along the bottom, so I'm going to just walk through 2nd grade, which is on the far left. What you're seeing in 2nd grade is in the fall, we expect our students to be at the 64th percentile to be proficient. That's based on looking at projecting that students will be proficient on the MCA, which doesn't start until 3rd grade, right? So these are correlated using lots of historical data through RET, the RET team. So we want to see our students at the 64th percentile in the fall. Then in the winter, we expect them to be moved up to the 70th percentile and then the 73rd in the spring. What we saw this year is students came in at 37%. And then at the middle of the year, when that target moved up, they're at 33%, which is an increase year over year, but isn't as high as they came in, right? So that's an area that we want to see improve. You also see in 3rd grade, we're seeing an increase both in the fall and in the winter this year from last year to this year, which is a good indication that something is working, right? We're improving both in both of those different testing time periods, but all the way across the rest of this slide, this is all baseline data. I also want to note that as you look at the percentiles that we expect all the way over to the right side in grade 8, we need to see students at the 75th percentile in order for that to correlate with passing of the MCA or predicted passing of the MCA. So it's a pretty high bar.
Couple questions. So
Yes.
what is this test? I guess the FAST A reading.
So it's a broad universal screener of reading proficiency, right? So it's it is our assessment that we choose to align with both requirements from the state that we have a universal screener that then tells us who are the students we need to know more about. So it assesses students' reading comprehension, et cetera, up through, it's appropriate up through high school. We use it through 8th grade.
So just like general reading
Yeah.
comprehension.
Yeah, so passages and questions about the different meaning that they might make from a text, et cetera.
And then, so for the MCA, at least in my opinion, one of the biggest issues is there is no incentive to succeed. Like they could just skip through the answers and there's no penalty. Do we have any idea if like a test like this would suffer from that same mentality? Like some students just don't care and don't try, whereas they otherwise could have passed.
That's a great
Right.
question. Yeah, so one of the things, and we used this in a former district that I worked in for a number of years, and you can see students' scores get flagged if they rush. So you see that right in the report, and you can then retest a student because the system will flag. That doesn't happen for the MCA. Students can just move through, right? But for this assessment in particular, that gets flagged both at the RET level and can for a site-based testing coordinator, so that you know that may be a student who needed a different testing environment. Great question. You're welcome. All right, let's move to accountability. So I am a fan of when we set expectations for anybody, right, myself included, that you check you inspect what you expect, right? So, and I think you do that with support. So the sort of third leg of the stool, right, is making sure that folks have the support they need to be successful in what we are asking of them. So I want to walk through what we did before the new curriculum came in. So this is just a review. I'm not going to walk through the whole slide because you all have seen this in former presentations, but this was the structure for how we got to where we are now in terms of our curricular implementation. So how did we get CKLA, Bridge to Read, and Functional Morphology? They were all piloted, and they were piloted in these 5 areas was how we reviewed curricula and how we landed with what we are currently implementing. So I want to go from there to now how do we know that those things are working, right? So these were the areas that we were looking at in order to ensure we had high quality materials. And then I spoke a little bit earlier about a K-12 literacy team. I'd like to be able to engage with our leaders both around I think as somebody who's been in the shoes of a school leader, instructional leadership is often the reason that we go into those roles, right? We want to make sure that our teachers and our students are successful. And what that looks like when you are leading a building that's K-5, that's 6-8, 9-12 with thousands of students, if there aren't conditions set for the leader to know what they're looking for, it's really easy to not be able to give meaningful feedback both to your teachers and up to the district level. So what I would like to do with essentially, maybe it's permission from this group and senior leadership, et cetera, is to pull this group of folks together, build intentional systems that all of us agree upon are what we are looking for in our classrooms. So that's, of course, informed by content expertise, but it's also informed by what the lived experience of a principal is, right? What is reasonable in terms of how often I can ask a leader to be in a classroom and what should they be looking for? So I've highlighted some things on this slide. Structures, supports, and communication, right? So I've been in front of our leaders, K-5, 6-8, 9-12, throughout this year talking about literacy implementation. We're gathering their feedback, and it always needs to be the reciprocal cycle. So as we move toward a K-12 vision, given we're building out our K-12 literacy specialist model, we will, of course, need for this team a clear vision, consistent expectations across the board, and then supportive conditions so our teachers can do their good work, but that they can tell us when things are not working. And then, of course, we need to be looking at strengths, barriers, and next steps. And this comes from the NERN network. It's a, I would say, nerdy research network that I am a part of and have learned a lot from in terms of how to support accountability with clear expectations for leaders and teachers. So if you look at the next slide, these are essentially the drivers that we would want to be making sure our evaluation system includes. So what training and coaching do our teachers and principals need? And then what are our systems at the district level that need to be in place? What data are we using to inform whether or not things are working or they're not? And then, of course, leadership at the base, right? So making sure that at all levels of the system, we all believe we are going in the same direction. You can go to the next slide. So similar to, this was a few slides ago, the pilot review metrics, we have built out some draft tools for implementation and instructional decision-making. What assessments would we be using? How are we supporting teachers as they're implementing? We are, of course, already engaging in cyclical PD. I'll offer here the CKLA site visits were a part of the package that we purchased when you all adopted CKLA as our knowledge building curriculum. That comes with support from the curricular resource. That those 5 days of site visits were a part of that contract, and we now feel that a lot of the work in terms of moving forward, we can support internally. What's the scope and sequence of the curriculum, et cetera, and then what are our ideas for improvement? And you'll see that both teachers and principals, that's one of the key questions that we asked during the site visits, and then I'll be asking of our principals, is what's working and what do your teachers need that they don't have? Because in any first year, we know there's areas for improvement. I'm going to note that there is an appendix. It's very brief. I didn't want to share mid-year literacy data without offering to the board and the public our mid-year math data as well. So it's our COM data, and then if you go to the next slide, A math. If we stop here for just a moment, the A math data for every grade level is baseline. So what I'm hopeful for is when we present this same time of year next year, we are able to see how much improvement has been made across both literacy and math with this new assessment. And I think I'm to questions. What questions do you have for me?
Thank you so much, and thank you for this presentation. I just wanted to maybe amplify the early part of your presentation where you talked about the engaging topics and themes and the vocabulary words. I had the chance to tour several different grade levels at Mississippi Elementary while they were doing their CKLA lessons, and I saw that. In each one, no matter what the topic was, no matter which stage of the lesson they were in when we were visiting the classrooms, the students were very engaged. The vocabulary words were challenging. Like the rigor of CKLA is high. So that was really impressive to see, and it was just nice to hear you echo what I had experienced a couple weeks ago in the site visits that you saw. So thank you for sharing that with the whole board. 2 questions. You mentioned the CKLA coaches. Are they from CKLA? Is that part of what we got with the curriculum?
Yes. Yep. So they were, all of the coaches that were here over the course of the week were longtime teachers who also taught using CKLA, who have now been hired essentially as trainers for CKLA. So most of them, they came in with many more years of using the curriculum than our teachers have because it's new to us. Yes.
That's great. And how many times will we do that with them as
That's
a part
great
of this?
question. We just talked about that in a literacy team meeting today where we were just reflecting on this and then planning for Principal PD. We have several more days that are a part of our contract. I think what I want to ask our principals on Wednesday is what are the next steps that their teachers need? Because and something that I failed to mention is that many of our school leaders following the CKLA site visits, because they're now like a week and a half ago, right? Today in the afternoon, many of our leaders chose to, it was a PD day, right, for elementary. They used some of their time to backwards plan for the next CKLA unit using the new materials that their teachers gained more information about at the site visits. So it was like they planned an immediate next step at the site level. So what we don't want to do is jump into how should we use those CKLA hours before we engage with our principals and our literacy specialists. But we do have more time.
That makes sense. Thank
Yep.
you for expanding on that. And then my last question about CKLA is, do you know if there are any at-home resources that we have or links? I know a lot of parents are interested in being able to support this curriculum, and to your point, students are excited about it and they're talking about it at home. I'm hearing that from the community as well. So if there is anything we can share on the district site that families could find, I think it would be appreciated.
We can absolutely do that. And yes, they can even, so students can have, they can go online to that's called the hub. They can have all of the texts. Either they can read them or have them read to them, so parents could see the texts that are a part of each unit. And yes, to additional resources too, so we can work on that.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's great. That's all.
Thanks, Michelle. Oh, wow, that's loud. Thanks, Sarah. I guess I'd like to dive into testing a little bit. So a question first on MCA and how it matches to what we're doing now, and then a little bit on FAST versus CAPD. So MCA first. So I've been told in the past, or it's been explained to me in the past that how MCA actually tests may not completely line up with how school districts teach, if you will. So it might be the depth of knowledge might be different. In ELA, we not only teach reading comprehension, we teach speaking and writing, and all of that may not be on the MCA. So my question is, the new literacy curriculum in general, maybe not just CKLA, but when our students or any students are taking the MCAs, will it be new to them, or will it, or what we're teaching, they're going to know, I've done this, I know, you know?
That's a great question.
Okay.
So to the degree to which we can ensure that it feels familiar to them, we are doing so. I would say like this, the knowledge building side of the curriculum will be a huge asset to them as they take tests like the MCA, particularly because the comment that I think Director DeShane made about it's high rigor, right? Like the writing and the reading and the discussion that students are being asked to engage in. It's good stuff, right? Like it's challenging. And with the MCA 4s coming for ELA, similar to what we saw with the science test, the rigor is going up, right? We are a state that expects a lot of our students and of our schools. So I think our students will only benefit from having a stronger, more comprehensive curriculum. The way the test is built is something we have to teach them, right, before they take the MCA each year. But in terms of like the high-level content, making meaning from a text, yes, it is similar to what we're expecting of them in the curriculum.
God, I've just heard in the past that having a big disconnect between what you're doing in the classroom and then throwing a test at
Sure.
a student that doesn't match can create, you may not get the information
Sure.
on what your students can actually do, so.
Which is part of why a balanced, more complete assessment system is something that's really important to me, right? So having a universal screener, so we have those checks throughout the year. And when you ask a question about, right, like CAPTI, having an additional layer that helps us understand what are the things students need or don't need in terms of intervention. And then the MCA, really, you shouldn't be surprised as a district leader what you see on the MCA, because we should know throughout the year, based on the other assessments we use, what to expect on the MCA.
Yeah, I mean, so many people, our community, a lot of people look at the MCA score,
Yep.
right? They're not looking
Yes.
at our FAST or our
Yep.
CAPTI or things like that. So we have to do what's right for students, but we have to make sure that if our district and they are gonna be held to a standard of an MCA, that it's not a surprise to them. And
Correct.
they know
Yep.
what they're getting into before they're
Yep.
taking the test. Jumping into the FAST and CAPTI. So I've heard this feedback. I think you will get this as a potential recommendation. You're smiling, you may know this, but 6-8 only, I'm talking, not K-5, is that the CAPTI has been amazing, which is great. It's accessible. I'm going to give you a few of the highlights, right? It's accessible. The students don't have to have as much background knowledge, so we can actually understand what they can do as opposed to being based on background knowledge. And it gives immediate and actionable results at each sub-skill, which I think is great. And it's more than, at least what I'm hearing, the teachers are saying it's more than what they've gotten in the past from FAST, MCA, MAP,
Yep.
really anything. The recommendation I think you will get 6-8 only is that FAST is not needed at 6-8. So, and CAPTI should be done in the fall, so it can inform instruction. So you're smiling, you
I have heard
probably
that.
heard that. But it
Yep.
also goes back to, you know, if you can save 3 to 6 days of testing on a test that is only a predictor of what they're going to do in MCA and it doesn't give a teacher actionable results, and you can have 6 more days of instruction, that might be a huge bang for your buck. So just wanted to mention that.
It has come to me, and I will say I'm not surprised. I've been really excited to hear the positive feedback from our teachers about CAPTI, particularly because we're hearing it across content areas. And we actually led, today was a paraprofessional PD day, and several of the sessions, my literacy team led sessions on CAPTI and the use of CAPTI data for paras. And they were super excited to have access to data that is, like you said, like closer to how to make an instructional decision. They are, I will just name they serve different purposes, right? And CAPTI can be used as your universal screener in addition to being a diagnostic.
Well, and I think they have different, sorry, I'm going to just follow up. I think they may have different needs at levels, right?
Yes,
So
correct.
K-5,
Yep.
you may have to have that. I think 6-8, that is for discussion would be my guess.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. My question is about I think it's about the screener tools. So we're using 3 different CKLA, Bridge to Read, and functional morphology. Is there a way for us to use these screeners in some way to know if any specific one is effective? So how do we differentiate that? If any of the 3 is, not performing, how do we know?
That is a million-dollar question. The shortest answer would be no, we can't pull them apart based on these assessments. When we look at, so CAPTI specifically, and that, you'll have more information on that next month, what all the different subtests are. CAPTI can help us understand more about our foundational skills curricula, right? Like, for whom are there gaps? And for many of our students, given that CAPTI is only given in grades 4 through 8, those are gaps that we need to fill because they don't have access to that foundational curriculum anymore, right? They are in grades that are at the high end or out of receiving foundational skills instruction, aside from in a reading intervention class. The longer answer is FastBridge is going to be, the A reading is going to give you a big picture overview of where students are as compared to grade level standards, and not specifically which piece of our 3 curricula or the 2 that a student is engaging in is successful. We will know that based on the gaps that we see in on CAPTI, right? Like, once we've had multiple iterations of CAPTI, we'll be able to have a better sense of where there are holes.
So as we get down the road with CAPTI, it will tell us
Yeah.
there's a problem at the lower level?
And/or which of the 6 different components we are weaker in, so that we can build out lessons and/or units for those specific skills, yeah. Because the ideal would be that what we are doing with our CAPTI data is we've now identified the groups of students who need a certain thing, right? If we are instructing them in that area and that doesn't work, that says we need to do something different, and we won't know that until we have multiple rounds.
And the site visits that you did for CKLA, they were specific to the CKLA part of it?
Yes, yep.
Okay. Is there anything similar planned for the other 2?
That is a question others have asked too. So we don't have that scheduled yet, but now that we know that we found that model was really successful of, for lack of a better way of saying, we knocked out all 25 schools in a week, right? And I was able to pull together 5 folks at the district level who were able to co-facilitate. I would be interested in gathering similar data around Bridge to Read and functional morphology. And it's a pretty big lift from a school perspective, because they planned really, like, they changed their days such that we could get the most out of the whole day. But that's a question I'd love to be able to come back with a plan to this group.
And then my last question is just with respect to how students performed on the evaluations on the FAST stuff this time. Is there any part of that could just, so they didn't make, huge progress from year over year? And I get it's a different cohort of kids, but
Yeah.
is changing the setup a contributor to that? In other words, might we expect now, third round of testing in the spring, that at least students are they're more used to the curriculum, the way that instruction is done, the materials, all of that? Or does this really come down to just, set that aside? It's, either you could comprehend what you read or not, or you could make sense of nonsense words or not.
Sure. No, that's a great question, and you're naming what is often called an implementation dip.
Okay.
So what I'm not seeing yet is something that I would call a system-wide dip.
Yeah.
Many districts do experience a brief dip because of the big lift that it is on teachers to change practice, and students are engaging in a different type of routine, right? So what my hope would be that I am not presenting at the end of the year and terming it as an implementation dip, but yes, that is something that tends to happen with, especially when it's a large shift in practice, which, given the science of reading across our whole state and the country, there's a lot of new that our teachers have needed to learn.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Coach Langenfeld. Okay, so I'm looking at the FAST A reading for grades 2 to 8, and just across the board, let's say the average score is actually, it's about 33%, so about a third. And so we've had many spirited discussions in the past about the trustworthiness, reliability of the MCA test. And I've granted many times there are problems with that test. And so even just setting the MCA aside, so far as I can tell, this test is telling us the exact same thing the MCA is telling us, which is 1/3 of students pass and 2/3 don't. It's about that. And so my question is maybe a twofold question. Am I understanding that correctly? And then, again, just from your experience, like, I can't wrap my mind around why only 1/3 of students could read at grade level. Like, what is causing that? I'll throw one thing out there. I've heard from some teachers who speak a little more candidly. They've just said broken homes or just dysfunctional homes, and then that leads to stuff like this. But for 2/3, though, that would be shocking to me. So, like, from in your experience, like, what is causing only 1/3 of students to be able to pass?
Yeah, that's a fair question, and I would say it's, I love presenting on positive, productive, awesome things we are seeing in our classrooms, and it's sobering to present on data that looks like this. So I should have acknowledged that as I was presenting the slide. So yes, you are correct, right? That is what this data says. So I'll name sort of two things. One, I mentioned earlier, the percentiles that are at the bottom. So we choose as a district to align our cut scores on the FastBridge assessment with what is predicted success on the MCA. Because the MCA, Minnesota's standardized assessments expect a lot of our students, right? We want amazing readers and writers and scientists and folks who understand history, et cetera, in our state. The national norm is what FastBridge would use. So I'll name that, fact. We use a percentile ranking that helps us predict, because of what Director Simon had mentioned earlier, right? Like, that it's true that our community will expect that our students are able to pass the MCA. That is the goal of our state. We want to have students who are able to pass our state tests. And that means that the percentiles that we are looking for on a nationally normed test are higher. Typically, the test would use the 50th percentile as passing. So many more of our students are above the 50th percentile on the national norms, but that won't predict that they are proficient on the MCA. And I know that doesn't entirely answer the question that you're asking, right? But that is a part of our context in our district. And so we want to make sure when we're presenting data to you all that it matches, that I don't say today 60% of our students are at grade level and then they take the MCA, and that's not the case. So I think our challenge, to name a part of the rest of your question, like, how can that be and what do we need to do about it? One of the things I think we're doing is we are using stronger curricula that builds the knowledge students need to have, given that our assessment assumes they can read a pretty heavy text and make meaning from it. So we're practicing that starting in the early elementary years. And providing them intervention where we haven't before. We haven't had assessment tools that gave us granular enough information to be able to pinpoint the skills that students didn't have. So I guess my hope would be, and hope has to come with a plan, right, is that what you see we are implementing provides us with better data moving forward.
I appreciate the answer. That helps explain a lot what we're doing. You certainly don't have to answer this question, but do you have any thoughts as like what is causing, I guess, just the unfortunately, I hate to say it, the inability of students to pass the test. Is it, I mean, I just look at it and at face value, it's they can't read at grade level. And maybe that's not a fair interpretation. I'm assuming it is. But like, okay, they can't read at grade level, but why, I guess? Like what it, again, maybe it's stuff we don't want to say out loud because it's sad, but like I've heard from teachers, they attribute some, not all of it, to just broken homes. And so if a student goes home to a dysfunctional home, they're just not going to get the support they need there to come back to school and succeed, which is heartbreaking, and there's really nothing we can do about that. But I'm just curious, like, is there anything on our end that's happening that like can speak to why this could be? Because I don't doubt at all the ability of the teachers to teach well, and so that's why this is so confusing to me. Like, we got good curriculum, we have great teachers. It just doesn't make any sense to me, I guess.
I think some of it I would look back at the last few years of training that our teachers have had on changing their practice. I think particularly when we think about reading, we know better now how to instruct children in the early years of reading. We didn't back when I was teaching. So I think like when I think about the difference in how I would teach now, knowing what I know now to how I did when I was in the classroom, it's a world of difference, right? Like I wouldn't hire me as the old me, right? Because I didn't have the skills that I need in order to serve students in learning how to read. So I guess what I would say is, again, my hope would be our teachers have better training now. They had the best training that there was before, right? So that's what's been hard for our teachers is they were doing the best they could with the materials and the training they had. They now have different training and new materials. So I think my hope would be that when I present on this in a year, we are having a different conversation because we're having a conversation about progress for our students.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I could just, as we look at your presentation tonight, one of the important pieces that really jumped out at me that I keep hearing when I'm going to different literacy presentations you've included, and that's the science of implementation. So what you just described is so vitally important. First and foremost, did we have the right materials? Second, did the teachers have the right training that they needed? Did they have the right support? Was the system making it a priority? I mean, there are so many variables to why we are where we are. I think it's really vitally important that says, this is where we are today. It clearly wasn't working where we needed or wanted it to be. But I think even going back to the data on your littlest ones, the kinders, when you look at their data, just the whole baseline data for that group of incoming students is vitally important. And then saying, okay, what are they doing? And I know when you start to break out the data that I've looked at around Bridge to Read and some of those things, you can see the significant changes. So I'm wondering, I'm going to go back to Director Audette's comment about the different tools or curriculum that we're using. There are bright spots, and maybe just as you work with this incredible team that you're going to assemble, that they can come back and kind of share the bigger picture, because this is going to be a heavy lift. And I know that I can't, there are so many different reasons that we are where we are.
Sure.
But when you know better, you do better, right?
Yep.
And that's kind of where I feel we're at. But anyway, I appreciate the questions, though, that are being asked. Okay, Superintendent.
I'll try to be brief, but I really appreciate the question about why
I do too.
this district has a long history, and board members, you know this, of trying to look at, is there a correlation with other things that we are trying to mitigate? The biggest one I think we studied over time is poverty. So we've looked at how do our schools perform given our the rate of poverty that we measure. So Director Arkell, mobility, poverty, things like health, physical health, mental health, disability status, language acquisition. There's lots of factors that kind of creep into the effect of performance. And I love how Ms. Hunter kind of pointed out our goal is to try to mitigate all those things and still beat those odds, right? We have students that I think have many of those factors and are outperforming what we'd expect, and others are not. We're trying to close that gap. And so with the science of reading and really the best instruction is our best chance to counter some of those effects. I know we've shared at, our annual report, we have 80% of our buildings are high performing when you look at other schools that have the same makeup of students across the metro especially. So we got a lot of room to grow. You pointed that out very well. The data tells us that. And we have some pockets of real strong success too. And so that was really the Bridge to Read story, right? Why we started with one building and actually one classroom, and now we're doing that system-wide. So it's a very fair and relevant question. Feels like there's many things kind of countering the effects of high achievement.
One more question for you, and thank you for taking so many questions. Also, I'll just add to what you're saying, Superintendent McIntyre. I personally would caveat poverty with, there's a reason at least I use broken homes, because I personally believe you can have a family in poverty, but if a child has two parents at home that love them, I don't think, and they provide a stable home, I don't think that poverty is necessarily going to be a deal breaker for them being able to learn. That's just my experience or what I think. But I should add to this, because I've mentioned this in the past, and I think this is, I guess I want to know how it factors into this, is we adopted, this new curriculum has a much greater emphasis on phonics. And so in the past, I've spoken to the idea of how I think phonics plays a huge role in students learning how to read. And so I guess why I'm still shocked is, like for grades 2 and 3, for example, even though we're using curriculum with phonics now, it's still, the test results still landed about 1/3. And so that's why, like, now as opposed to previously, I guess I don't know what to say anymore, because I certainly think phonics is the way to teach reading, no questions. And I think it was a tremendous error that many districts around the country made for many years before this to not use phonics as heavily. But even with it implemented, is this like it's going to take time type of a thing? But then at the same time, I can't grasp why the second graders next year using the same curriculum are suddenly going to do, let's say, 2x better than the ones this year with the same curriculum. That doesn't make any sense to me. So that's, I guess, what role is phonics playing in this is my question.
Yeah, I would say in how students start to begin to engage in text on their own, it plays a huge role. And when I look at the A reading assumes that students are already reading at grade level. All of those foundational skills are in place, and they have had multiple years of knowledge building. Our students who are like these second graders, right, this year had a half year of those two things, unless they were in a pilot site and they had a bit more, right? So I would say one of your questions was like, is it something that takes time? Yes. Should we start to see marked improvements? Yes. Should we be seeing them yet? No. There's too much that goes into a universal screener that's looking at like every component of reading. It assumes multiple years of what we are doing now have been in place for every child, and that any interventions that they needed were also in place over those years they've been in our institution. So I think, unfortunately, this is a long game, and what we should start to see is measurable improvements that tell us we are going in the right direction, but it won't be an overnight shift. Both from a teaching perspective, right? Our educators are learning how to use new tools, and our students are engaging in a different kind of literacy learning that's very rigorous, which was a theme that we heard in both, like mostly in the positive tense, right? Like while we were in buildings, but also that like it's hard. Students are being challenged, and that's great and wonderful, and that shows us the gap between what they needed and what they have had in the past.
Director Holkman.
Thank you. So this was a presentation on the Tier 1, and so looking at these scores and also the part where, I mean, certainly those students who've moved on to middle school and even our students in grades 4 and 5 have had this other reading instruction, which we said, well, we know better now. We know better what we can do. So as we were looking at this, it looks like baseline for our students across the district, many of them need interventions. So how are we gonna, what can we do with that tier one instruction to build back and not just say, this group of student needs
Yep.
intervention, but rather, what can we provide to the students system-wide to get everyone those missing pieces that they didn't have because we didn't know different?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I will model that in next month's presentation using our CAPTI data, but I'll give you a bit, like a beginning response to that tonight. So one of the things we are doing, we're leading CAPTI data dives with our elementary leaders on Wednesday. I can't remember. All three groups are going to get a CAPTI data dive at the leadership level. And one of the steps in that data dive process is to look at the groups of students. It's 6 subtests, right? So students who were show need, either high need or some need. In the first subtest, when you see that the percent of students in a class or in a grade level at your school is high. So if you have like 50, 60%, 80% of your students show a need in that area, that becomes a class-wide intervention, right? That is tier 1. And so one of my literacy leaders today led a CAPTI data dive for one of our middle schools. And they started to dig into which of the, just on their PD day today, they asked, because they were like, we're done with the CAPTI, we love this data, we want to know how to use it. And so in many cases in those classrooms, they are going to be embedding a tier 1 brief intervention for all students in classes where the majority of students have that need. So what you'll see when we present on CAPTI data is depending on the grade level, there are some of the subtests where that's going to be like an obvious solution. It will depend on the site, right, what the size of the group that is, but we'll go from class-wide intervention to small group or individual intervention based on that data. Because you're absolutely right, it's not, we can't say it's too late, students have moved to secondary, right? They're in our system and they deserve intervention.
So I'm wondering to board members, I'm just thinking that as I'm especially looking at what's happening at middle schools, I mean, the fast A reading data here says grade 7, 19%, grade 8, 17%. I mean, it looks like we've got something really serious to look into here. I wonder, and I don't know how to initiate such a thing, but, and I might be alone in this, but do we need to look at not just spot interventions to fit in something, like you said, brief, and, because this is, the middle school classes, we've got ELA, they've got science class, they've got math class, they've got elective courses, they've got a language course. I mean, is this the kind of thing where maybe we need to reach in and say, our middle school kids actually need reading class every day? I don't know, it's a question that I'm just throwing out there.
As I'm thinking about this, for me, I'd like to know what's in this data. Who's in this data? How is it aggregated? I think those are the
Yep.
pieces, because, and then what would you recommend?
Sure.
Because this is not, I don't think anybody thinks this is acceptable,
Sure.
right? So that's what I would be interested in, having a follow-up.
Well, and that's the plan for next month's work session. So what I'd be happy to do, Director Hochman, is come to that session with not only the data, but you should, of course, include in any data dive, right, like, and what are our next steps? So I'd love to receive feedback from this group on that next month when we share the data. I'll have and some of that will be already implemented next steps, because our schools are going to get moving, right? So many of our schools have already started to implement intervention, so I can bring to you what's happening and then what we'd like to make sure is systemic.
Very good. And then second thing, you were talking about that you went to do these visits at the schools, and you heard you shared some of the really great things. And then you said you also had a chance to hear what do you need? And can you share some of those things?
Yeah, and a lot of the what they need, time to plan. This is a brand new resource and it takes longer, right? Nobody wants to show up on a day of instruction and not really feel confident in what you're teaching. So I think figuring out how to embed in learning and achievement PD, right? So as we plan for professional development for the remainder of this year and then moving into next school year, how much supported backwards planning can we offer, right? That is professional development. It just also serves to make sure you're prepared to teach next unit, right? And we heard the writing the scaffolding from what has been the expectation for writing and what is now the expectation in the new curriculum is wide, right? So there is a need for additional support in how we get our students all of those steps from what their writing looked like historically and what we are expecting of them now. The biggest was time and more guidance around the tools that they could, the most influential tools, because they still, it is too overwhelming. Lots of curricula now have, 100 different links to all of these different wonderful resources, and that's not super helpful if you're brand new to the curriculum. It is if you're really confident and you know what you're looking for. I would say another thing that I will come back to talk about, because tonight was just about CKLA, is the how do we integrate our foundational skills curricula and CKLA without feeling like we're always running out of literacy time, right? Because now that they know better, they want to do better, and you get to the end of the literacy block, and because it's new, they want support with how to trim. So we're suggesting trimming from the resource, not skipping, right? So finding components that you can shorten so that we are not inadvertently skipping content knowledge that is going to be important next year.
That's really interesting to know. That kind of ties back to what I was asking about with the middle school information too. Maybe, is there something, do we need to review how we're planning out the days for elementary school? Because the literacy it's foundational. That's why it's one of our 3 structural goals, right? We need to have our kids reading. So if that means that we, in my opinion, and I don't know what the rest of the board is thinking, but if we need to review what's happening with those middle school schedules so that they're not like, oh, I have too much to do, where can I trim it? Rather, well, let's expand the time so that we can touch all those pieces that these kids need so they can, we can get these test scores up and get these kids proficient and confident and enjoying learning.
Thank you, Co-Chair Lincolnfeld. To follow up on your thought, Linda, I would say it's not just foundational, it is the foundation of everything else they learn. No subject is more important than the ability to read. And so I do know that Minnesota state law permits for and allows students to be pulled from other classes if they're not reading at grade level. There might be some caveats as to what grades that's in, but I would be wildly in favor of that, because if we just take this data at face value, 4 out of 5 middle school students can't read at grade level. And so I would question, given that and acknowledging that all other classes are important, compared to being able to read, they are not important. And so I would have absolutely no problem with and be wildly in favor of pulling them from as many classes as we need to so that they can read at grade level, because if they can't do this, they're set to fail virtually everything else going forward. So I personally couldn't exaggerate how important this is and how much we need to take urgent action now. So there's almost no solution you could propose that I would say no to at this point.
Director Simon.
Long discussion, thanks, Michelle. Sarah, you talked about what we're wanting for writing is much more rigorous than they've ever had. Does our standard for that rigorous writing match the MCA standard for rigorous writing?
We're going to have a new MCA.
Yep.
So we will be able to see once we have our first round of results on the MCA4. But, my short answer would be yes. That's why we looked at a curriculum like this. And it supports the sort of interdisciplinary ability to write around scientific text, right? Historical text that students need to pass that science MCA, right? To be successful in high school social studies and take the high-level assessments that we want our students to have access to in high school as well. So, yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
My thought process was just, and that's good, if it matches, I think that's great. And I think our district wanting more rigor is great, even more than MCA, that would be wonderful, right? But if it is more, then do you take a step approach, right? So if the gap is so wide, let's get them to MCA and then get them to what we want. Now, maybe that doesn't sound like that's the case, but the other thing I'll comment on, the discussion about a focus or a change. I think flexibility is good, and looking at change is good, and I know you and your team will bring that forward when you dive into the data, and that's great. One thing I've said for years, and I just want to put this out there too for consideration, and it's a money thing, and we may not have the money for it, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. But we have before, we have after school, we have summer. There have been things like summer academies. There's been innovation that Anoka-Hennepin hasn't done, probably for lack of money, but I'd like us to think outside the box too, and that's not for an immediate thing, but just for the future of if, and reading is fundamental, right? So do we need to implement something in times that isn't going to necessarily impact Tier 1 instruction, and how much would that cost? So.
Director Arco.
I do have one follow-up thought. I have read and believe that one of the biggest reasons you have kind of these testing gaps is summer, where not all, but a lot of students simply just cease learning for 3 months and then just jump back in. And so if there was some kind of continuation over the summer, and sometimes that happens at home naturally, sometimes it doesn't, that actually facilitates much better outcomes in the long run. So I do agree with you on that. That doesn't mean we're going to do summer school or anything, but some kind of solution would be nice there.
Director
I
Arco.
forgot, thank you, I forgot to ask this, but I've been looking at progress through science of reading in other states, and there's states, I think particularly in the South right now, who have made some pretty massive progress in reading. Mississippi is one of them, which, according to at least how their educational system for a long time, didn't seem like it was doing so well, but they've really made big progress, and so, and I know they're following science of reading, but do we have anybody in our district who is looking at what, because I think that you can find what they've done. Do we have anybody who's looking at that? Because it seems like they've made some pretty rapid turnarounds that are pretty
Yeah.
impressive.
Yes, because they've done what we are now doing. They just did it before us. So I would say making sure your teachers are trained using like science of reading methodology, then following that with materials that match with the science of reading, and then making sure so that this next step, which feels like it's almost more important, is, and now, are we actually using those tools the ways they were designed, right? So I think in those states, there has been a lot of system-wide observation, accountability structures, right? Like observing in classrooms, making sure things are being done the way that they were directed to be. And I think we are well on our way in terms of the main ingredients of what has been successful in other states are the things that Minnesota is now doing. And I will say, I mean, I am so impressed with the ways that our educators engaged with the CKLA coaches. They were asking questions that the coaches were saying, like, this doesn't feel like a first year. Y'all are asking questions that are 3 years in, right? Because many times these CKLA coaches serve the same district for a period of time, so they get to know the people in the district, and they are working with them on an ongoing basis. And so I think my hope is that the answer to your question is, like, so the answer is we are doing, right, what those states were doing, but that we need to stay the course. And I think in many of other states where there's been progress, they have stuck with a literacy focus. It is what is talked about. It is what is looked at in buildings. It's what you are proud of because you're making progress. So I think we're just earlier in the stage right now.
Just as a follow-up to that, I know that, Sarah, you probably have been at conferences with, how do you say her name? Dr. Burke, who ran the initiative, and the superintendent is Carrie Wright, Dr. Carrie Wright. And I think I sent Linda, so there's a lot of people in our district that have tuned in, and I know the state of Minnesota has brought the experts in from Mississippi, and people continue to look to those spaces. So that was a very important conversation. We're a little over time, but quite frankly, it is a priority. And I think that the superintendent was writing, and he has a massive page full here, so I'm thinking he got a lot of what we talked about that we'd like to hear more about. And just to circle back, there's a lot of things in here. I appreciate seeing all the research, and especially the implementation science is so vitally important. It started with Director Duchesne's comment about parent and family engagement, and I know parents do the very best they can with what they know and have. So it would be really great if you could circle back and just talk about how, parents will engage if we help them engage. And sometimes it's not always on them. They wait for us sometimes to partner with, so we want to welcome them into this story too. And that's a very vital, important process and relationship for all of us. So I just put that out there as well. But you're coming back. And I would offer that, I would assume, board members, that as you think about if there's questions that you want answered as you ponder these, or you're reading a piece of research, we need to keep asking, because quite frankly, I think we all agree, this isn't where we need or want to be for our kids. We know a lot more, but there's some pretty big concerning gaps right now. So I think all of us would like to know what we can do to help, and I think great suggestions, you would welcome them, I would assume, as well. And, even, there are many that came out at this board table tonight, so looking forward to the next steps. I'm very excited about it, and I know the biggest thing that I see when I read about the Mississippi miracle is it was years and years and years, and school districts that started down this road didn't see the results they had expected and pulled out. Didn't happen. So there's a lot of research out on that, so stay the course and continue working the work. And anyway, big lift, and thank you. And thank you to all the teachers who are behind all of this too. Appreciate all of you. Great comments, great conversation. Thank you. Okay. Big breath. Here we go. Our next item tonight is the District Achievement and Integration Plan. I see important people who are not at the table, so maybe you can let people know who is also here with part of your team, but I want to welcome our Deputy Superintendent, Tanya Constantine, as well as Scott Hare, our Executive Director of Student Support Services, and Tom Shaw, the Director of Student Services, and I know you have team members as well in the audience, but looking forward to your presentation this evening.
Thanks so much. Joining us tonight is Ross Giles, Student Services Coordinator, and Denise Collins, Assistant Director of Student Services.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Good evening, Superintendent McIntyre, co-chairs Langenfeld and Hoekman. Mr. Shaw and Mr. Hare and I, we have been working on the Achievement and Integration Plan, for most of the school year. So under Minnesota statute, we are required to bring the plan to you, the board. And the district does receive just over $8 million with this plan. And this plan supports our magnet and specialty school choice, our literacy support, and our academic services. And some of those literacy intervention support folks that Sarah was talking about are coded to A&I, to that $8 million. So the important thing to remember about the $8 million is that all of the great things that we get out of this money, it saves us from Fund 1. So it's protecting our general fund. So I'm going to let Mr. Hare and Mr. Shaw kind of go through what our plan looks like for the next 3 years.
Thank you. I don't know if I have to lean over.
Yeah, well, there
All
you
right.
go.
So as a reminder, and Tanya kind of alluded to it, we do fall under certain statute and rules, so we've highlighted what those statutes and rules are. And part of that requirement is that every year we need to approve the budget for A&I, so we're asking for the approval for the fiscal year 27 budget. But we also have to approve the 3-year plan for achievement and integration. So this evening, next slide, please. So this evening, we're going to keep a high focus on the level of the overall program, the impact, and also the budget. The Achievement and Integration Program supports three main outcomes: improving academic achievement, expanding access to school choice, and providing targeted professional learning for staff. So the following slides are going to show you how we get to those outcomes.
All right. One way the district advances these outcomes is through our magnet and specialty programming. Anoka-Hennepin proudly operates 12 magnet and specialty schools, which provide innovative programming and meaningful school choice for our families and opportunities for our kids. These schools provide families with additional choice while offering focused academic themes and great instruction. Achievement and integration funding helps support curriculum alignment, staff training, and program sustainability within our magnet and specialty schools. Go ahead, next slide. Participation in a regional collaboration is a required part of the program. Anoka-Hennepin works with 6 neighboring school districts through the Northwest Suburban Integration School District. This partnership allows districts to coordinate services and avoid duplication of programs and services, and to operate more efficiently while meeting state requirements. And so we meet regularly with these other school districts to share ideas and programming and things like that, as well as transportation and other things with their nuts and bolts. One of the things I glossed over, probably because this is new for me, is that we looked at the magnet and specialty schools in the last slide. And one of the things I got to do really recently is visit the Coon Rapids High School engineering program. And it just blew me away. They partnered with a local business, Aggressive Hydraulics, and they gave them a real life problem that the kids had to solve, and then they had to present on. And so at Coon Rapids High School, Aggressive Hydraulics came and listened to these solutions for the kids. They had to build an actual prototype and walk them through it. And so when we think of our magnet and specialty schools, when I got to see the opportunities that our kids have, it's really exciting. All right, these are the strategies within the Achievement Integration Plan for fiscal year 27, and this is a summary of them. We talked about our magnet and specialty schools. I'd also like to highlight our AVID program. AVID, or Advancement via Individual Determination, is a student-centered approach that prepares students for college and career in life. AVID is currently implemented in 5 high schools and 6 middle schools, serving 1,300 students, and it has an attendance rate of 95% in those classes. And we know that attendance rate leads to grad rate rising, which is really exciting. And this work aligns directly with our college and career readiness goals. I want to highlight here in a few days, about a month, our middle school AVID students will be taking part in Mad City Money. They'll go over to the STEP program, and they'll tour STEP and see what awesome things are available there. And then they're going to get a hands-on personal finance simulation that helps build money management skills. And Ms. Collins leads that. She does a fabulous job. And it's these hands-on opportunities, programs within this plan provide that we see the strength of our kids and the incredible opportunities that they have in our district.
So overall, this is the budget. We developed the Achievement and Integration Plan in close partnership with our finance department. These funds can be spent in 3 main areas or buckets: direct student services, professional development, and operations. However, the state sets clear guardrails. At least 80% must go directly to student-facing services, up to 20% may be used for professional development, and no more than 10% can be spent on operations. We're very proud that we spend 91.9% of this allocated to direct student services, 2.6% to professional development, and only 5.5% of this is spent on any type of operations or administration.
All right, the student services bucket, and you can see from the slide, direct student services make up the largest share of achievement and integration budget. These funds support literacy, specialty programming, student advising, and family school connections, and all those efforts across the district. Staffing and services are designed to stay flexible and responsive to enrollment and building needs, while still making sure students can count on consistent support in the building.
The next area is professional development. Achievement and integration professional development helps make sure our teachers and staff have a clear understanding of literacy and math interventions, specialty and magnet programming, and how all of this connects for college and career readiness.
All right, and lastly, operations. Operational support covers the behind-the-scenes work that keep the programs running smoothly, including financial oversight, reporting, coordination, and our participation with the Northwest Suburban Integration School District. These costs help ensure the programs stay on track, meet requirements, and is managed responsibly. Administrative spending remains well below the allowable limit. As part of the Joint Powers Agreement, the district contributes 8% of our achievement and integration funding. That supports magnet transportation, enrollment coordination, and the services for our magnet schools.
Yeah, so that's it, gentlemen, members of the board. We're willing to take any questions that you might have, and then we'll be seeking your approval for this 3-year plan.
Or we'll be at the next meeting, board members, if it goes on the consent agenda next meeting.
Clarification. Questions? Director?
I see the Northwest Integration, can't remember what all the acronym is.
Yeah, Northwest Suburban
Yeah,
Integration
Suburban,
School
that's what I
District,
missed
yeah.
there. That's a sizable fee. What services do we get for that fee?
That's a great question. And busing, when you look at just moving kids around, busing is a huge part of it. They also help us with a portal that allows kids to move around the district, which is essential for giving that school choice and allowing kids from outside the district to come in. They also have college and career exploration classes, they have college fairs, they have staff that come in and run student groups that focus on student leadership. And then a big part of it is supporting our curriculum integrators. So our curriculum integrators it's a really unique position, and they come together in this consortium and they partner and collaborate with each other. If they don't have that, luckily we're big, but it allows us to go to other districts and see what they're doing well in their magnet and specialty schools and build on our own talent. And I would tell you that Anoka-Hennepin has a lot of talent, so a lot of times we're sharing that also with those. So it is a real collaboration, and that's just a high-level view of what that money is used for.
Other questions? Director Audette?
Could you go to back to the discussion of, what is the intent of this program at the state level? What are they trying to do in making this money available, but putting all of this administration around it? What is the aim?
Well, I think there's a lot of different possibilities with this funding. You know, when I go down, and I think it creates options for kids and families to move around. It creates systems within our schools to give kids opportunities and to chase passions that they never have. To go back to my Coon Rapids High School example, where they get to, be in programs like engineering and bring in things like that to just see, what they're passionate about. The college and career readiness aspect, is a really big and important part of it too, that we support in terms of, just what options are there past this and supporting kids and families as they move through our system. Some of this goes to too, like supporting kids and families. Attendance is a big focus of our program this year. Knowing that attendance leads to higher graduation rates, but attendance is something that, across our state has been a big conversation for many different reasons. And supporting families and helping them navigate the system and feel connected as they improve their attendance is a big part of it.
Thanks. And you did a good job of, I think, speaking to what we're doing with the funds we're receiving, but I still don't, so like, we chose to make magnet schools, and they provide this choice that you speak of, but a magnet school is not a requirement of the achievement and integration funds, so I'm really higher level than that. What are they wanting school districts such as ours to be doing?
Thanks, that's actually, thank you for helping clarify,
Okay.
because that's, closing the achievement gap is really a huge focus on that. And when we meet together as teams, you look at $3.3 million going to reading intervention. It goes back to our previous conversation of closing that gap. And, that's an example of, that's the passion behind this, is we see a need in reading, and we take a big chunk of this money and we put it towards that based on what we see in the school district. And it just tries to have a holistic approach to narrowing this gap in many, many different ways, because our schools look different, it's a very complex issues and problems that we're dealing with, so you need to attack it different ways, and this plan attacks it in different ways.
Okay.
What is nice about it is kind of what Directors Arco and Simon were talking about of, say, extending our school day or summer interventions. It provides us money with building those interventions into our school day. So some of those literacy interventions.
Yeah. So if we go back 3 years ago, I was pretty critical of this plan because I didn't think that the goals we set were ridiculously low. Like, to try to improve achievement, I made a big thing about it because we were after minuscule improvement. And so I compared what we're doing now to that one. I just did a side-by-side comparison to just kind of see, well, what did we change? And I was actually curious, did we meet any of the goals that we had in our last plan with the money the last time? Because I think it's nice that we can get this money and it can form some of these programs. But if the programs aren't leading to the goal of reducing the achievement gap, then even though they're like super embedded and really complicated, that I would at least want us to review. Should we keep doing them? Or is there something different we could do that would have a greater impact on the achievement gap? And,
Sorry.
yeah, sorry, you go ahead.
No, I agree with you because I've seen those goals, Director Audette, and I think that's why we changed a lot of the goals.
Yeah,
And really, it kind of goes hand in hand too with everything that Sarah Hunter was saying. We have this new literacy curriculum, and now we have this A&I funding, and we'll have literacy intervention folks, and all together, we're hoping that the goals that we're setting are going to be accurate and achievable.
yes, I noticed some of the goals, like in particular, the one related to fast bridge assessment, which is goal number 1. That we're after like a 10% improvement, which is great. Some of the others sort of remain the same, and then as we went further along, I did notice that we must have achieved some of the goals we had related to students taking college courses, and I think not so much for, and I say that because our goals this time are higher than that as a percent. Let's get 89% of kids to do that versus last time it was 85 or 83. In some cases, I think the targets went down. Our graduation rate, I think, generally is lower, so we're trying to, move that back up. And I think that's good. But it seems like the plan was more effective, and they're not the same things, but at achieving some of these goals related to taking some of the college courses and things than it was just the pure academic ones with reading or math. And I'm trying to understand, is that really a goal of it? Or, frankly, is the state require you to have goals, and in order to get the money, we take this money and we apply it in different areas, right? Some amount of it is for literacy specialists or whatever, and we then use that in a really intensive way with the hope of trying to intervene. But it doesn't make logical sense to me why the goals on the plan wouldn't be more aggressive. And I'm still not convinced that, other than choice, we know what these magnet programs provide to us. And I guess maybe they're not designed to improve academic performance, but if they are, then I don't know why it wouldn't be part of the plan. So, I don't know. It's $8 million annually, right? So this is
Yeah.
almost a $26 million 3-year plan. I'm
I
just
think-
frustrated with it.
Yeah.
And it's not, I don't think it's necessarily a result, maybe it's my frustration is with the state and what they're trying to achieve.
Can,
I don't know.
I just want to maybe throw some crumbs out in the open to maybe it create some conversation. When we talk about meeting the goals for our specialty and magnet schools, I go back to what Sarah Hunter was talking about with rigor. The part of the purpose of these programs is not to walk into a wonderful program like University Avenue and it's beautiful and they have murals and things like that. But what's going on underneath a lot of that is throughout the curriculum and throughout the day, they're adding context to all of the learning and trying to raise that rigor. And the importance of that is that the kids move out through the school day knowing that one thing will connect to another, and that overall part is supposed to elevate learning, right? That's the theory behind it. I think it's fair enough. How do you measure that, right? But when you sit down with these curriculum integrators are incredible people, and they give a lot of thought of, we're not just going to teach math today. We're going to teach math in conjunction with aerospace and see if we're going to grab 3 kids we didn't think we were going to grab, and we're going to raise their learning through this.
An opportunity, because to your point, not all families or kids might be receiving these same
Yeah.
opportunities of these field trips or different specialty items that we provide here.
One of the other ones is Starbase, which, once again, on the surface, Starbase looks fun, right? But I've attended Starbase twice and participated with the kids a lot of times, and they're asking, when you look at the level of questions they're asking, they're very high level, and they're engaging kids at a very high level. And so building that excitement and that depth of knowledge and connecting all these things that they're learning at school with these experiences. I mean, school is fun, but it's also connected to our lives, and I think that's an important thing to establish that rigor. And so when that kid wants to go deeper on something that they learned in math, or they want to read more about something that got their interest going, those are the things that these magnet and specialty programs in part are trying to do. I mean, they try to do a lot more than that, but those are the things that I see that are really important to offer to our kids and families.
Thank you.
Director Simon.
I'm going to jump in with a couple of comments. I served on the Northwest Suburban Board for many years early on, so I think that, at least for me, I think the school choice piece is very important in the fact of students in Anoka-Hennepin have a lot to choose from in all of these districts, right? And the barrier for a lot of students to attend something that they're passionate about is transportation, and this offers them transportation. So I think that in Minnesota, we don't have school choice voucher type system. So I think this is, it may not have been designed that way, but this for Anoka-Hennepin has become kind of that option for parents and students. So at least I think that part is important. And I do think we have some data. I think you could easily pull some data about how our programs that we're funding with this are successful or not. Like AVID specifically, you mentioned about attendance rates, right? So those kids before AVID, their attendance rates weren't as good as 96%. So just coming to school, I think, is a data point we can use. I'm probably most familiar with Coon Rapids High School, and I will say that some of this is anecdotal. I bet we could get actual data for it too, but I've been told by employers, the folks, I was there with you, Tom, during that hydraulic demonstration, right? But the businesses that partner with us will say, these students in this program are above and beyond even employees we're hiring right now. So that's got to mean something, I think, from the employer side. And then I have heard, and this is anecdotal, but when our Coon Rapids High School students get to college and are participating in engineering, first of all, schools are noticing our engineering program, and kids are getting accepted to major colleges in engineering as partially because of that, I would guess. But also, when they're in their first classes, the high schools are getting back feedback from the colleges saying, these kids are above and beyond. Like, they know exactly what to do and how to do these experiments and things like that. So I think there could be some data pulled, I would bet, on our, and I bet you already have it and just haven't thought of it in that way and presented it that way about what these programs are doing. When it comes to the goals, Matt, I remember when you mentioned, it was a few years ago when the A&I came, and some of the goals were like increase 1% or 3%. You know, it was like these really, what's that? Yeah, very low. How I looked at that, and maybe it's not right or right, but it's right for me at least, is that $8 million out of $500 million budget is a piece to it, right? So it does fund some of our literacy. So the piece that it funds for that literacy might not have as big of an impact, but it goes to the whole plan, and we would hope that it has huge impacts. So that's how I looked at it. I don't know if it's the right way to look at it, but it's how I've always looked at it. So, thanks.
Other questions, comments from the board? Director Holtman.
Thank you. Just looking at strategy 6, recruitment and retention of high-quality staff. It says type of strategy, recruitment and retention of racially and ethnically diverse teachers and administrators. I don't know, perhaps this is something that goes into Mr. Palmetier's area, but is that, I mean, we don't want to be hiring anyone based on race. That would not be appropriate. How is this, I just want to make certain that the document isn't indicating that we're trying to make hiring based on race.
Actually, I'll take that one from a human resources perspective. This budget funds our recruitment and retention specialist for our district. One of the items in achievement and integration is to really focus on reducing achievement gaps. And there's lots of mention of, and I think emphasis really from the state level to ensure that we are diligent in attempting to have a teacher workforce that represents our student body as it relates to racial and ethnic, their demographic variables. How that relates to our recruitment and retention efforts is a concerted effort to utilize specific job boards, listservs, things that would cater to more of a diverse audience of highly qualified teachers. You're absolutely correct, though, that is not a qualifier for employment. It's not something that we consider or could consider as it relates to an individual's qualifications for a certain job. It's really about the avenues of different ways to reach out to more of a diverse, qualified applicant pool.
And if I can add, this position, we worked as the special ed department under me as well, which is their national issue on trying to recruit and retain special education staff. That includes paras as well as teachers. I've been working very hard with our Director of Special Education, Melissa Hayes, and we work very hard with the person in this position who is just out there really working hard to find us staff. And it's an incredible effort to find the staff because everybody's trying to find a small pool of highly qualified special ed staff. And I don't know what we would do without that position because we were able to be fully staffed. When I was hired last year, about this time, we had 70 openings for teachers in special education. That was quite scary. By the time we started, we were pretty much fully staffed. This position, although funded out of A&I, does an incredible effort for our department in special education, but as well as finding physics teachers, math teachers, you name it. I don't know what we would do without this position, because everybody's going after this small pool of teachers that are out there. And so we're just very grateful because we were able to staff our positions this year because of this position. And I've got a whole list of different things that she does for our department in finding those staff.
That's great work.
Director Arco?
Thank you, Co-Chair Langenfeld. So I'll follow up on what you said too, Linda, 'cause I had some of the same thoughts. So first off, I just want to acknowledge kind of like what Director Audette said. He's had some experience with this now that I've been here a couple years. I'm much more familiar with this, and so I've kind of taken the approach of just let what is be and learn, and then kind of weigh in as appropriate. And this was something I was more than happy to just learn and understand initially. So I think the plan the district put together within the framework of what's required is good. So well done. No problems on my end. And so I think you guys did a great job. So thank you for that. Something I have discovered, I don't have specifics for this, but I think, Tanya, you alluded to this, and past conversations we've had at different meetings have alluded to this as well. There's a lot of leeway in how this money can be spent, and like I said, I can't sit here and give you a line item list of how we can spend it, but if we were to adjust funds from A to B or something, this would be one of the areas we could do that in, so I would never want to just turn the money down. All of that being said, so that's the district side of things, no problems from what the district did. I actually look at what the state is requiring of us and why, and I just have some thoughts. And so Appendix H is the MDE document, and it talks about racially isolated districts must partner with adjoining districts on student integration strategies. And so before I comment on that, and I personally made the same comment at a previous board meeting, so what you said, Linda, was just this idea of hiring based on race. I say this truly respectfully to everybody here, but no matter how much legal language or whatever you use to justify this, the second race is a consideration in hiring, you have violated the Civil Rights Act. You can't do that. And even if you go to certain boards, you try to be fair, whatever, you can't do that. It's illegal. Point in case, I can virtually prove it to you right now. If you take the exact same precedent and just swap the color from black to white and say we're looking for white people, everyone would correctly lose their minds because that's racist. And so the mere fact that we swap the colors and now suddenly it's okay, that's not how that works. That is how the culture has chosen to incorrectly be okay with it, but it is still ultimately racist. It doesn't matter how you justify it. I'm not okay with this. You can't do that. That's illegal. And then the same thing, if you actually look at what the whole idea of racially isolated districts is even speaking of, it's the idea, if you look up all the definitions according to Minnesota law, it's pretty much students who self-identify or identified in the general racial categories of African, Black Americans, Asian, Pacific Americans, Chicano, Latino Americans, and American Indian, Alaska Native, and pretty much everything that's not white. So once again, the premise of the law that we're trying to follow is first consider race, then take action. That is a violation of the Civil Rights Act. We can't do it. And as if it wasn't easy enough to understand, the Supreme Court, it was like a couple years ago, I think, they actually shut down the affirmative action that colleges do, which again is premised on first consider race, then take action. And they said that was illegal. So that to me, and we're doing it in a lot more like friendly way, and I'll acknowledge that, but at its absolute core, the first principle that we're violating is we're considering race, and then based on the answer to that question, we're taking action. The minute you do that, that's racist, and it is a violation of the Civil Rights Act. This law, so far as I'm concerned, is illegal, and if we had the goal, we could actually just sue the state of Minnesota and probably overturn this, because they can't do this. They can't force us to consider race and then take actions based on what the race of the students are. Again, if you don't believe me, swap the word white for black. Everybody loses their minds. That's the litmus test. Everybody can see it. It's super obvious this is illegal, and I'm very likely not going to vote for it when the time comes.
Palmetier.
I just wanted to respond at least to the notion of the illegality of the statute. We have 60 years of civil rights laws and interpretation of those laws, of affirmative action programs, in employment and also in student admissions. Throughout that entire time, there has been at least some understanding and tacit acknowledgement by the Supreme Court and federal agencies interpreting the law that there are aspects of programming and design that can come around questions of race. The most recent cases that you alluded to were the Students for Fair Admission cases for Harvard and North Carolina. Those two cases did not deal with employment, they dealt with admissions. Those cases specifically said that admissions used as a standard, as a point factor, are not permissible. And clearly in the state of Minnesota and with respect to how we approach education, we have no admission standards. We allow all students to come. So the question fundamentally is around achievement and integration laws. Those laws have never, to my knowledge, been deemed to be unconstitutional or a violation of the Civil Rights Act. They might be someday, it's possible. But in the meantime, when we're talking about capturing funds for maximum benefit for all of our students, and by the way, the achievement and integration statutes actually very clearly say that these funds need to be used without regards to making racial distinctions. Those are significant factors. As it relates to recruitment, I think Dr. Cherry stated it quite well. When we have two candidates for a position, we don't use race as a factor. We try to find the most qualified and competent persons to fill those positions. We never do that. And so, and this money would not be used for that purpose.
Hello, Director.
So respectfully, that is a contradiction in terms. Either we're considering race or we're not. And if we are, then we're considering race, and that's illegal. Second, to illustrate the point, if you're willing to answer. Again, just switch the colors. Swap out black, put in white. Would you be okay with that?
No, I would not. The
Point
reality
and
is that if you looked at 60 years of civil rights litigation, you would also see that those affirmative actions were designed to address historic inequities that existed in the system. The Supreme Court very specifically approved such programs over time. Now, the court's changing. And again, there might be a ruling someday that deals with or adopts the theory that you're talking about. But as it stands right now, that's simply not the law.
It is the law, that's just not how the courts are interpreting it. And the fact that you're not willing to swap out white for black is the proof of what I'm saying.
Superintendent McIntyre.
Yeah, board members, this is our recommendation to comply with the Minnesota law, and I want to go back to we are trying to provide academic support in science, math, engineering, arts, and technology, and we are required to do that with the 6 neighboring school districts in a common plan that we have. I know, Casey, you're on the board there. So from my perspective, until the law does change, this is our best foot forward on how to comply with that and provide the opportunities. I think the Director Simon described very well. Kids win, and families win. They want school choice in a variety of areas that we know our students are moving on to high levels in. So this is our best effort to comply with the law, whether we agree with it or not. It's our job to comply with that and bring that forward, and that's an $8 million bucket of money that we sure need with our, financial moment. So we feel like we're putting in the right areas on an academic focus and complying with the district and the school identifications that we're, directed by the state of Minnesota to comply with. So this is our best plan. If there's a majority of the board that wants us to change that plan, we would also need to make sure we're honoring our agreements with the other 6 districts to Northwest Suburban. And I appreciate, Jeff, you bringing up that you also served on that school board.
Just as Director Duchesne.
Thank you, and thank you for that introduction. Mr. McIntyre, about the Joint Powers Agreement. Our next meeting is March 18th, and so I'd be happy to bring any questions that our board members have. So if you want to send those to me separately after this meeting, be happy to carry those forward. And I just want to let everyone know that the current Joint Powers group is committed to additional work sessions, doing deep dives into the budget at Northwest Suburban and into the programming, which I think will get at some of the questions, some of which I have raised earlier in the year at the Northwest Suburban Board table about the fees and about the services provided, just so that we could get a really deep understanding. So would look forward to taking those questions away and back to that group from anybody.
And then could you bring that forward then? Definitely. Before the vote. That sounds very good. I appreciate the explanation and obviously a robust conversation here. I actually was in the beginning of this when this particular statute was put into place for achievement and integration, and it has evolved over time in terms of where the district is really investing the resources primarily, but it was to address and attract kids to schools and opportunities, as Director Simon said. And there is no, it's kids who want sign up, nobody asks, we don't ask them questions about their racial identities, to the best of my knowledge. Would that be an accurate statement? I mean, any kid can sign up to come to the magnet schools, right? So I think one of the things as we look forward to this and really look at what we're funding, to me, that's a very important part of this resource. It's $8 million, and we may not necessarily agree with the law, and to your point, Mr. Parmentier, just the notion that that could change, yep. I look at it, and I went through this document very carefully, and some of the maintenance pieces are, you know, I looked at it through what is it doing in terms of leveraging and moving the dial. I know I just recently received a document on Avid over at Champlain Park High School where they have the Wall of Fame where every child who's moving on to post-secondary or military of their choice and career future is all on the wall, and they are all students who are involved in the Avid program. So that a lot of our resource goes into that space. I know another part is really that whole framing around the magnet programs, and to your point, Mr. Shaw, I really appreciated the stories, and I think when you see it, you understand it. It's pretty intense and brings families together and students to school. But as we move forward, I'm hoping that before we get to the vote on this at the consent agenda, that any other questions that people have, we really can get them addressed and directed, either through student services. I would say that having been, you know, I think it's important to maybe check out a magnet school and see what they're doing there. I was over at Lincoln just recently, and they had an artist in residency where kids were writing music using technology, computers. That's a place and a space and a skill set that it's a future we don't know yet, but it's a future that these kids are having the opportunity to be exposed to. So it's opening the field of vision for kids. Yeah, and you see it in the Coon Rapids High School programming and engineering. It's just, these are extraordinary opportunities that we can offer our kids, and I can't imagine that they would not be a benefit to all kids. They are, and they are attractors. So I just really hope that people really think and reflect more and ask the questions that they need so that we can move forward with our kids and these opportunities and the supports that are provided by the adults in this budget as well. All right. Thank you. Thank you all for being here as well, and look forward to future conversations. Moving on. Let's see, we've been here now 2 hours. Does anyone need to stand up before or are we good to go to the next The next item? Yes? Board members, we're good to go? Thumbs up? All right, here we go. So our next agenda item is medical insurance plan design, and I want to welcome Dr. Jennifer Cherry, our Chief Human Resource Officer, Todd Mensick, Director of Labor Relations and Benefits, and obviously our AN. Yeah, AN consultant, and I know you have a name. It's Josh, right? Josh, I knew it was Josh, I didn't know your last name. So we're looking forward to your presentation, and ready to go. Welcome.
Good evening, co-chairs Langenfeld and Hoekman, and members of the board, Superintendent McIntyre. This evening, we are going to continue to the discussion that we started a month ago at the work session about our medical insurance update. This evening, we are rolling into additional conversations around plan design, so we'll kick it off with a plan overview, just a refresher on what we currently have in place and our medical insurance plan. We'll share a little bit of information with you about our claims and our performance within our plan, and then we will follow with the work that we've been doing to consider plan design changes and finish it off with a timeline and what's in front of us. So at this time, I'm going to pass it over to Todd Mensink, and he'll get us started.
All right. So we are a self-funded, self-insured district. We've been that way for over 50 years now. It's become far more popular. A lot of districts are self-funded now, but we were before a lot of the others were. And what that basically means is rather than us paying an insurance company to provide coverage for us, we pay our own claims, set our own rates, and then don't have to pay the profit and an extra fee for maintaining reserve for those insurance companies. Our budget is about $85 million a year. We do use Medica as a third-party administrator, so from the use perspective, it feels like just like having a Medica plan. They're administering the plan. We have two different plan designs. One is a copay plan, which has zero deductible and just copays when you go to the doctor. It's a fairly high-priced plan with a high premium that provides a lot of benefit. And then we have three plan designs. We call them our 80-20 plan designs. And I'll talk about them a little later, because when we talk about plan design, you'll see how that plan works. But we have that plan on three different networks. So one broad network that allows people to go to any doctor they want. And then we have two narrower networks where they're agreeing to stay within like a care system. And by doing so, we can get better reimbursement rates for them and charge a little bit less. Premiums have to be set at a level to generate enough revenue to pay our claims and administrative fees. And those premiums costs are shared between the employer and employee. It's a negotiated item. In the contract, we negotiate the dollar amount that the district is going to contribute to insurance every 2 years in every contract. Josh is going to take the second slide, which is talking about our historic claims in the last couple of years.
Thanks, Todd. So what we're showing here is, you've seen the little small subtitle, so by trend here, so this claims cost PEPM, so it's per employee per month, but what, rolling 12 months. So what this means is each one of these vertical lines is the average per employee per month cost for the prior 12 months, right? So it's a rolling average, if you will. This isn't the actual monthly claims for all these months. It would be much more variable. So we're trying to get a judgment here on how the district's experience is running over this 2.5 year period compared to what we're seeing in the market as an example. And the example that we have here is this red line is if the rolling 12-month trend was 10% per month, which historically up until now would be considered very high. 10% trend in the industry is going up, and it's closer, the market trend is closer to 10% now, but it hasn't been over this whole period. But what you see here is that, you know, that red line is 10%, and the last 2-year periods is what has been used to set the self-insured premium rates, and the district's claims are significantly higher than that 10%. So, just an example, the plan year that started in September, the claims used for that ran through about November 2024. So if you go back to that month, the experience was increasing towards the end of that, but then it looked like it was tailing off and through February 25, and then significantly spiked again, starting in March 2025, and has continued to go up now. So our hope is after November, perhaps it looks like November is tailing off, experience might improve. But this is the reason for the rate impact the last 2 years, basically, and what we're trying to illustrate here. The main key cost drivers, at least in the most recent experience period, are specialty medications, unexpectedly high number of very high claims, high claimants. I mean, there were, in the most recent 12-month period, there were 14 people over $500,000, as an example, which for a group this size is significantly higher than what we would expect. And then also GLP-1 medications for any employers that are covering those, this being one. That is one of the key cost drivers that we're seeing. Any questions?
The light, is the light on?
Those key cost drivers, is there a way to break those out? Is it 30%, 30%, 30%? You know, is it a third, or
Yeah.
is GLPs much higher than others?
Yes, we can quantify that. I don't know off the
Okay.
top of my head, but yeah.
Got it. Thanks.
Certainly.
Other questions?
All right, just a little bit more data on that one with the key cost drivers. As Josh just shared, we had 14 claimants with over $500,000 in claims. We have quite a few high-cost claimants, so we have over 300 members with claims over $50,000. So in general, as Josh was sharing, some of those high-cost claims, it's the really, really high cost, and it's also just across-the-board high costs. So what you see on this chart is the per employee per month, rolling 12-month claims. But what you can see here is per month, it's hovering over $1,700 in claims per employee per month. So really high. Okay, and so because those claims are high, we know that they were high last year. Last year, we saw a 22% increase in premiums and what we needed to do to ensure that we had enough revenue to cover those claims. Late last spring, we considered some modifications to our plan and how we might consider mitigating those increases or reducing the overall costs. We did consider removing GLP-1 coverage for weight loss. At that time, we did not have buy-in from all of our employee groups, and we did not make a change to that. That is an item that still is up for consideration. As a group in our insurance committee, we've been working all year on different plan design considerations. In September of 2025 is when we came together as a group for the first time this year. And in the next month, we started really evaluating, digging into our enrollment and our budget, and provided an update to our committee. What we found is that our enrollment had reduced at the beginning of the plan year. We have approximately 900 fewer members on our plan than we did previously, and I don't think we expected that reduction in members. That equates to not quite 500 employees, but when I say members, I mean employees and all of their dependents, so all of the members that are included there. So we did see quite an adjustment in enrollment, and that impacts our budget quite a bit, because what we have then is we have less revenue coming in, but we're still paying out claims from the people that are still incurring those expenses prior to that date. In December, we came back together and had a health plan performance review. That's where Medica came in and gave us an overview of how our plan had performed over the last year. That's where we dug into that data. So answering that question that you just had, Jeff, I'm sorry, I don't have that information with me right now, but that's the type of questions that we did dig into at that time, so we can circle back and get that information for you. In January, we were really focused on the RFP for our third-party administrator and facilitating that request for proposal. We also implemented a survey to all of our employees to get additional information about potential plan design changes and what those really assess the appetite for various things. We asked a question again about removal of GLP-1 coverage for weight loss. We asked about the emphasis on lowering premiums and how that would impact the need to reduce out-of-pocket maximums and how that potentially could change deductibles. We also began to enter the idea of moving towards more of a high deductible plan. In February, we came back together and reviewed those results. We also, at that time, selected our third-party administrator, and the board approved that. Knowing that information, we're also now able to drill down even further and begin to imagine rates. And so we've begun some analysis of some initial rate setting. Just last week, we sent out an additional employee survey, again, with the hopes of gaining additional input from a wider range of employees than those that are on the insurance committee. What the members are of the insurance committee are made up of representatives from each of our employee groups. Strong message that we heard in our last insurance committee meeting is that these decisions are very big, and they wanted more education of our employees overall, and more feedback from all employees. They felt like the information that they get would be really hard for them to convey to their employee groups. And so that was the need to send out another employee survey. So this month, we're contemplating various plan design changes and also beginning to set our rate projections that'll be needed for next year.
All right, what we're looking at are high deductible health plans. Interestingly, in the past, we've referred to our 80/20 plan design as a high deductible health plan, but it's not according to the legal definition. So it's not HSA compatible. And so high deductible plans, the IRS sets limits on minimum deductible and maximum out of pocket. And so it used to be that at least our deductible would have made it a high deductible plan, but there were other elements that weren't included in that. But over time, that deductible has increased. It increases a little bit with inflation every year. And since our deductible hasn't increased, it's now below that threshold for a high deductible plan. Preventative care is covered before deductibles met on every high deductible plan, on every health plan that's required, you know, by the Affordable Care Act. And prescription drugs, this is one big difference. Our current plan, the prescription drugs don't apply to the deductible. And for a high deductible plan, they have to apply to the deductible. And the big advantage of a high deductible plan is that you can pair it with a health savings account. And the real advantage of that, there's a triple tax advantage to it. You put the money in pre-tax, it grows tax-free, and then you can still use it for medical expenses without tax. And currently, we have an HRA, but only employers can contribute to HRAs. And then we have a flexible spending account employees can contribute to put in some pre-tax money, but that money is use it or lose it, other than a few $100s every year. And so the HSA actually provides a investment vehicle towards retirement. People can take that money out, have it available for insurance as needed, you know, especially if they have a higher deductible, and then that also grows, and they can invest it, and it becomes a retirement vehicle. And then, of course, premiums are generally lower than traditional plans because of the higher deductible. On the next slide, you can see and then this is a really simplified version. In the survey, we sent out a 10-minute video explaining these three plans. But our current 80/20 plan has a deductible of $1,500 single and $3,000 family, and an out-of-pocket maximum of $3,000 single and $6,000 family. And the reason it's called 80/20 is between those two amounts, between the $1,500 deductible and the $3,000 out-of-pocket max, there's an 80/20 co-share where the employee pays 20%, the district pays 80%. The first high deductible plan we were looking at is actually modeled after the CGIP plan design, the State Employee Group Insurance Program. They have 4 tiers on their plans, but this matches the second tier. And so it has a $2,250 deductible and a $4,500 family deductible. And then the out-of-pocket maximums are $3,400 single and $6,800 family. The one thing I would note about this plan is between those two, there's a 25/75 co-insurance, but there's also a number of different co-payments depending on the type of service that you would have. So what you're paying between that $2,250 and the $3,400 varies. And then the second high deductible plan we're discussing is the simplest design you can have. It's just a deductible that's also the same as the out-of-pocket maximum. So on the second plan, it would just be the employee responsible for the first $3,400 in claims, and then the district would take over. Or for families, the first $6,800, and then the district would take over. There's other details in the plan that were shared with the employees in the video, you know, for more details. But this is sort of the basis of where we're looking at just getting a plan that will have a little more affordable premiums. On the side, you can see the premium comparison. So moving from the current 80/20 plan to the high deductible health plan 1 will mean that rates can increase by 3.9% less. In any of these cases, we're going to see rate increases. The question is how big the rate increases are. And so the second high deductible plan has a 5.5% impact. One other thing we looked at in our committee was the possibility of limiting GLP-1s to just the most expensive plan. So employees who value that coverage could move to the expensive plan, but we could reduce the cost of some of the other plans that wouldn't cover it. And that would have about an extra 1.1% impact on each of those. So if in addition to moving to one of these high deductible plans, we were to reduce that, we were to not allow GLP-1 coverage on the low plan, then it'd be more like a 5% and a 6.6% reduction in premium. Yep. Director Audette.
For these high deductible plans with the HSAs, can you speak to where the HSA part comes in? Where does the ability to fund that,
Yeah.
how does it work?
So currently, we have HRAs, healthcare reimbursement accounts, and we put $750 for everyone with a single plan and $1,500 with a family plan. The plan would be, we would take that $750 or $1,500 and put it into an HSA instead. So the district would fund that first portion of it, and the employee would have the ability to, through payroll deduction, fund more than that.
And they can fund up to how much? Does anybody know?
I thought you had it in here, it's like 4,400.
I don't have it in here.
Oh, I saw it, it's approximately 4,500
It's in
and
the
8,000.
notes.
Is
It's
it in the notes?
It's in the notes,
on
okay.
it's in the notes.
See how close I got.
Do you have it
One
up?
second here.
It's okay,
On
it's,
the high
it's around, I
deductible
just,
plans.
I didn't know how much it was, but it's in that $5,000 range.
Yeah,
that they
and
can
it's higher if you have family coverage. It's more
Yeah.
like 8,000 for family coverage.
Yes.
What is it?
44 for self and 8750 for family.
Okay, 44 for self, 8750 for family.
So I think that's the key to explain to people is,
Yeah.
if you're not a current user of a lot of services and you can contribute that same kind of money into that plan, and then next year it's there and the year after, and then after a while it starts to grow. It does it does a couple things for people. It allows them, gives them a chance to think for a moment. Do I need to use the service right now, or would I rather keep growing that pool? And, they really do stay forever. I have one that's 11 years old from a previous employer, and it does exactly what, I haven't put in a dime into it. It keeps growing. I don't know when I'm gonna use it, but it's there. And so there are some big advantages, but it's a little bit different way of approaching healthcare.
Yeah.
So I feel like some of this is messaging, because I know for sure people did not understand how our plan worked, based on the number of comments we got about, we should stop being self-insured, which had nothing to do with
Yeah.
the premium rise. But they played that like they thought that it did, and other things. People are confused but they're mad because the rates are going up. And it feels like, in addition to the redesign, we really have to help people understand why it's happening to them, because they think we did it to them. We didn't do it to them. Nobody did it to anybody. It's just a function of the cost of the care, So, okay.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just add to that. Currently, we do have a flex spending account where people can put money in pre-tax to use for insurance. But we have people every year that forfeit money. We have people that just want to make sure they don't have to incur any out-of-pocket costs, so they'll put 3,000 in there to cover their out-of-pocket max, and then they don't come close to hitting it, and they just give up the money. And then you have other people who are on top of it, and they're buying glasses they don't need at the end of the year, in order to get the money spent. So those are two situations where having an HSA would be beneficial.
Okay.
Just a quick comment, I want to reinforce what was just said. I think we've tried to be consistent with this message for months, but it's worth saying again. More use, so the volume, overall volume of claims is just up. That's what that chart told me. More and more people are using it more often. Then the high-cost claims are on top of that, and then the high-cost medications are on top. But, those three big things.
Yep.
It's people choosing to use the plan more, and the services cost more, and unfortunately, we have more people needing it and more people needing really big services, right, on top of the medication factor. So that's those three things driving up, you said so well, the premiums. So we have to raise enough money to cover those costs.
What other questions? Director Simon?
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for the presentation. I want to make sure, I think I understand this, so I want to reinforce it for folks who are watching, because they may see this presentation and see negative numbers, but that doesn't mean their premiums are going to be negative on these new plans. You stated it, Todd, that even with these high deductible plans, your premiums that you're getting today on today's plans, these are going to be higher than, because of the reasons that were stated earlier. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I just don't want people to look at that and think, oh, they're designing plans that I'm going to be paying less. And then I agree with the discussion on HSAs. I've utilized those in my past also. They can be absolutely wonderful. One thing, and I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but one thing that we need to also consider is that folks on these plans, their premiums are going to go up, and then they would have to put more money into an HSA. So there may be simply where some teachers can't do that, or some people can't do that. Not that they shouldn't select the plan, because they'll still get the whatever, $1,000 or $750, whatever it is, from the district. But there's a lot that goes into that decision for people too, I think, so. That's all I got, thanks.
Director Arco?
Thank you, Co-Chair Langenfeld. So then what is the forecasted, I guess, premium increase for this year?
Yeah, I'll take that, and actually, if you could, switch the slide to the next one. I think this answers that, not directly, but indirectly, Director Arco. So at this moment in time, we are looking at potential plan design changes. We have some projected rates, some initial projected rates, and that's how we were able to come up with what the premium comparison would be. We are looking at increased premiums if we did nothing, that are almost in the ballpark of where we were in terms of increases last year. However, we are still waiting for another quarter worth of claims data. So when you looked at that trend line, you saw that it was just starting to level out for the last 2 months of data. That claims data only went through November. We need another quarter worth of data to ensure that that in fact is leveling out, to ensure that the rates that we are going to put forward for proposing adoption are at an adequate level that will have enough revenue coming in. So don't have a direct answer for you, but you can see the timeline of when you will have that answer, and that's in April. Following that, just moving forward, we'll be coming back to you with additional information at the business meeting to talk about some specific plan design changes that will have a proposed recommendation for you. With that, we'll be able to then come back in April with those rate projections.
Thank you for that. If I can follow up, maybe you can ballpark this, maybe you can't, but assuming we do the plan design options listed before, and generously assuming that the next quarter will even continue to taper off in the way we've seen, like what is, if that were the case, which to me would be the most ideal case we could hope for, what is the ballpark expectation for a premium increase then that we'll have to vote on upcoming here?
As you can tell, Director Arco, I'm a little hesitant to even share that with you as for a number, but the Insurance Advisory Committee did look at some potential projections in the ballpark of a 19.3% increase. So if we did nothing, if all the plan designs remained exactly the same, that was the projection with enough information through those November claims.
So if that were to, and I'm not saying it will happen, but if that were to happen, like, we'd probably reach some actual, like, critical breaking point. I don't see how that would even be possible to do. So I sure hope we can find a way to deal with this.
Director Audette?
No, we would have no choice. You have to increase them. The choice for the board or the school district is how much we'll reimburse for the fact that the premium has to be what it'll be, but we won't. The only hope for changing what that premium is going to be is to redesign the plan. Then it's going to be whatever it's going to be after that, but then we will have to approve those, because that's how you make the fund whole. And then later on, it's a budgeting question, and don't even get me started, but it's a negotiating thing about what the actual amount people are gonna take out of their paycheck is gonna be. And it'll be out of balance, for sure. It'll be out of balance again. It will absolutely be, because the current contract just got negotiated based upon the last rates. If it goes up, no matter what, it's gonna be out of balance. And we're gonna have the same fight again.
Follow-up question, go ahead.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Director Audette. I guess maybe I should state it better. I do, based on what you guys have described, any changes have to be agreed by the union. And I guess what I'm hoping for, but I'm also pretty skeptical of, is that they'll agree to some of these things, like the GLP-1s. I hope they will agree to that because they do actually have control over what some of these plans cost. It's just my understanding is, tell me if I'm wrong, the overall quality or the overall package has to become less. And if that were to happen, then some of these rates could drop. Is that generally? Yeah, so it's, I guess, a message to the teachers, just to be aware, the union can actually address this, more so than the board can, ironically. The union can address this, so keep that in mind. Hopefully that happens. Otherwise, like Director Audette was saying, we'll just be right back to where we were.
Director Simon?
Thanks, Michelle. You don't have to answer this now, but as you bring back more information, I had a few follow-ups on some of the information that was given. It talked about 14 people over 500,000 or 14 members over 500,000 in claims, 300 plus over 50K. Can you bring back what we were like last time, what we were previously and what you would estimate our pool would be, just so we can have context behind it, right? So when we get these questions from folks, we can say, this is why it's going up. And then also, over 900 left our insurance, our pool. And I'm just curious if there's any data behind those folks. I would guess they're probably not big users of insurance. So if there can be any data behind that of, we lost 900 that maybe didn't utilize it as much and we're helping pay the larger claims, so.
So that's a great question. Actually, we posed that to Medica, the third-party administrator, and so what they do is they it's called risk adjustment software. So they actually go through and model and assign a score to every single person covered on the plan, so that you can look before and after if there's a shift. The risk score before, the overall average risk score for the group was like 1.27 before, or the other way around, 1.26, and it only changed to 1.27. So that was a concern that we definitely brought up. It didn't bear out in this change in enrollment. So. And we'll follow up with the large claims from the prior period.
Other questions? Questions? So I have a question. If the board members, I had sent that to you, I don't know if the board members had gotten the video, but if they wanted to see it, can we make sure they have access to it? I think it's very helpful, actually.
So the message did go out to everyone with an Anoka-Hennepin email address on Friday afternoon. So if you didn't,
Oh, it did?
we can
Okay.
ensure, though, that the board's directors receive it directly as well.
Oh, thank you for that. I know I received it, but I'm on the insurance committee. So, and also, I would wonder if one or two more board members wanted to join me at a meeting or two, that we could certainly do that, correct? Up to three of us, right? It's really interesting to hear the conversations. I think that people are very interested in lowering the premiums and very concerned that we support our members well. So it's a real hard balance right now, but it's important for us to understand where we're at and then to understand where we can go forward. And I know there is a plan that will fall into place where there will be very robust education for our employees so that they really understand what options they have, which may not have been necessary, or at least this necessary in the past. So, go ahead.
Just two
Superintendent.
quick comments. Thank you, board members. I just want to stress two things. As we work through the timeline so that we can hit that open enrollment period on time, so that, because the new plan's going into place September 1. And then I know that the part of the committee work is the fact that it's 18 employee groups. So there's different perspectives across all our different groups of employees, and they all have to, that's the challenge in that, is to get common ground across a lot of different perspectives. So I would encourage any board members to take you up on that offer.
And they're all in the room.
Yep.
So it's really, really important to be there. Any other comments, questions? Yes, Director Argo.
Just a question for anybody who might know. Director Audette pointed out that there's a lot of confusion among just really everybody, but teachers with how the plans work. I agree. Some of the comments would indicate that it's just a confusing thing. How appropriate or inappropriate would it be if, like, the district or the board or whoever just started, this will sound ridiculous, but you'll get the idea, like some kind of just educational email campaign where the district sent out one email a week to teachers saying, understand better why the insurance is the way it is. Like, it just broke down one component each time and said, this is leading to this. GLP-1s lead to a 4% increase. We have this many claims that leads to this. These things can change and actually help, but the union has to agree to it. Like, not recommending any course of action, but just so that they know how it works. Is that just like wildly out of line, or is that something?
Answer that?
I believe we strive to educate our employees on our benefits plans and what is available to them. Each year during open enrollment, we do have a plethora of materials for employees to understand their benefit options. There are 4 options, and they vary wildly in premiums and out-of-pocket costs, and it really does take a lot for an individual to think about their own experience and what they need out of that plan, and then what plan is going to serve them best. And yet, we also know that our employees don't want to think about their benefits until they actually need to go to the doctor. And so we are in that constant battle of trying to provide enough information so that employees understand the benefits that are available to them and the value behind those benefits, and then the reception or the interest of our employees. We have also recently begun including various benefit updates or insurance updates in our biweekly In the Know, our newsletter, our employee newsletter. So I think the idea that you have, Director Arco, is a good one. It's a valid point. And one area that I'm picking up on that maybe you have an interest that we do is begin to also share information about the impact of the use and the impact of the high claimants and how that impacts overall premiums. And that's an area where we haven't shared a whole lot of information on that, other than the informational video that just went out.
And I'm just wondering too, if that could be a website, and we've done it in other ways for other topics, where it's sort of a deeper dive into how this works, and you can access it anywhere, anytime on your phone, whatever, right? So that could be we could build that out even more robustly on the webpage. Just a thought.
Sounds like a good follow-up plan. So the next insurance meeting for the group is when? Coming up, right?
On the 17th. So we scheduled another one because people felt they needed more of the survey data to make a decision on which of those plans we would consider. So the plan is, the survey is out this week. It was sent out Friday afternoon, and then we'll review the data next week, and the insurance committee meets on Tuesday.
Appreciate that. Well, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. And thank you for coming, Josh. I appreciate it as well. Well, certainly, last but not least, the last presentation tonight is our next agenda item on facilities update, and I want to welcome our Chief Operations Officer, Greg Cole. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your presentation on facilities.
All right, thank you. Co-Chair Langenfeld and Co-Chair Hochman, Superintendent McIntyre, members of the board, good evening. Coming to you with the facilities update this spring. You also have in your materials a board briefing with a lot more detail that if you wish to pursue some things that maybe I don't cover tonight, it'll be in there, or if not, certainly you can follow up with questions. I shifted things a little bit. You know, a lot of these updates have included bond projects from the past, and we have completed all those projects. And so there's a little bit of a shift in some of this that I hope you'll see with regard to how we prioritize projects, how we discuss them, how we think about them. And I want to be sure that our public understands that as well, because I think it's important. So first and foremost, some of the things that we think about with regard to any type of project or idea really boils down to four things: student success, staff excellence, community engagement and experience, and then safe and secure learning environments. Obviously, fiscal responsibility is a big part of that, but I didn't include that in this part because we work really hard to not discount ideas because we think they're too expensive. There's several reasons for that. One example is that oftentimes we have our eye on a particular technology or something that we wish to do, and it may be too expensive now, but with advancements that occur and vendors who get more and more creative about meeting market demands, sometimes there are things that become affordable. So we always keep those on the table, and we try not to rule things out just because they're too expensive at the time. In terms of learning environment goals, it's been a 15-year journey here that some of the board members who've been around a while know that we have spent a lot of time and energy focusing on mechanical systems, specifically thermal comfort, heating, cooling, and air exchange and dehumidification, just to create more comfortable learning environments. We've always had heat for a long time. But cooling has been a challenge, and it's particularly in the shoulder seasons. And we've heard loud and clear that that has a real impact on teaching and learning. And so we are very close to having the vast majority of our classrooms be cooled by the end of this summer, and that's something that we're pretty excited about and proud of, and it's been a long journey. And I have to give a shout out to Steve Anderson and Chuck Holden, my predecessor, that was something they were willing to take on because you don't see it. It's not pretty, and so sometimes, and that was at the expense of some aesthetics, but I can tell you that in my role now, I'm very happy that they were willing to take that on over a decade ago. Air quality is certainly important, and safety for all of our students, just with regard to, when I talk about safety in this regard, air exchange is really important to that as well. Strategic investments, this board has been very supportive of some of the ideas we've had with regard to utilizing our owned spaces. So as you know, previous examples of that was willingness to invest in repurposing Franklin to bring together formerly Pathways and Bridges to Two Rivers program, moving out of a lease space into a space we owned. Same with moving out of Crossroads into Sandburg Regional. And most recently, as a part of a budget reduction, kind of achieving two things, or killing two birds with one stone, which is getting out of another leased facility at the Coon Rapids Family Mall, and seizing the opportunity to have a one-stop enrollment center at the Educational Services Center in Anoka to provide essentially a better service to our families at a lower cost and as a part of a budget reduction process. So that's, I think folks should know and understand that that's something this board supported, and I think it's a real opportunity for us. In addition to that, strategic investment by the school board with regard to standardizing electronic door lock systems and exterior breach notification systems across the entire school district, as well as completing Dayton Elementary School's interior walls. We have completed the electronic door lock system project, and Dayton's walls will be completed at the end of the summer. So we're excited about that. As a part of all of that, you all have badges now that serve as fobs. So we had to move 8,000 employees to a completely different system. Another shout out to Carrie Erdahl, one of our staff members who single-handedly printed out all of those and assigned them to everybody in our school district, which was a huge lift by one person. So that's been a pretty exciting shift as well. We are also very close, and you've heard about mobile device applications that help us with communication and notification and essentially being able to act more swiftly. You've heard about that for some time. I know that's been a bit of a frustration, I know for me, but we are getting really close to piloting a program here. We've just had to synergize that with technology and buildings and grounds, and with our cybersecurity plan that's become more and more complex. But we're making progress, and I feel good about that being completed fairly soon. Federal COPS Award grant that Tim Fournier wrote, our manager of security and emergency operations. We secured that grant a little over a year ago, and now we have plans in place to complete the work for that to all of our facilities. That work should be completed this summer as well. Moving forward with major projects in fiscal year 26, and these are projects this summer that I kind of alluded to. Madison Elementary School will have its final phase of its dehumidification and cooling project, as well as Eisenhower Elementary School will have its final phase as a part of that. A refurbishment and improvement of 14 classrooms. Dayton Elementary School, as I mentioned, will complete that remodel of classroom spaces, so there will be no more open spaces there. Wanted you to make you aware as well of child nutrition program projects that we have going. These projects are funded out of the child nutrition budget. They do not impact the general fund. And so these are essentially, they have to be confined to kitchen spaces because of the rules around that funding. So River Trail, the ESC, Madison Elementary, Roosevelt, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Johnsville will all see upgrades in their kitchens this summer, either for cooler or freezers or ventilation upgrades, particularly in those kitchens that get really hot. So we want to be sure they have better working environments there. As I mentioned, the enrollment center, we believe that that will be ready to go by August and available to all our families district-wide. Some other miscellaneous projects I just want you to be aware of, replacement of all classroom doors at Lincoln Elementary School that have been around more than a half a century. So I know that's going to be very welcome. Maintenance of smokestacks. We actually have old smokestacks. They've become a little bit of a hazard, so we have plans to reduce those. They're not getting totally torn down, but we're able to reduce those and make them safer so that they're not a hazard for anybody around them. Those are at RTLC at L.O. Jacob as well as at Johnsville. Some elevator work at Mississippi, Rum River, and the ESC. Pavement work and parking lot repaves and reclamations at Hamilton, as well as at Coon Rapids Middle School will be done this summer. As you've heard previously, pools, we have a multi-year pool plan, so that's beginning this summer, and Northdale and Anoka-Fred Moore pools will both have some pretty significant upgrades to their air handling and mechanical systems. So those would be kind of the major highlighted projects. There's some others I think listed in your notes. Wanted to let you know about a process that we're resurrecting that we found to be very valuable. As you know, between 2022 and 2024, as a part of the aesthetics investment from the school board, we met with every administrative team around the district. We brought them in, met with our buildings and grounds department, to talk about their priorities and hopes for things that they would like to see us do to improve the appearances of their facilities. That sort of branched out into a lot of other things, and I would say it was mutually very beneficial. Our team learned a lot from our school leaders about what they need, and I think they learned from us about how we prioritize projects. Since then, we've also learned from our building administrators that they would like some assistance and help with how to think about the money that they have. So each building has facility and equipment dollars that we allocate every year based on a formula. As someone who went through principal school myself, one thing that you don't get taught, at least, and I don't think it's still taught, is how to manage a huge facility. There are a lot of responsibilities in a decision that a principal makes, and they really don't have a lot of direction. And so we've heard them, and we're working with them, and part of this second round is we're going to be starting to meet with buildings again coming up. We're going to do it again. And provide them with some, essentially like a rubric or a guide to help them understand what are the things that they should be thinking about planning for themselves, what are the types of things that they would expect to partner with the district buildings and grounds team on, in other words, we're sharing costs, and what are those things that the district would cover. That will help them plan their funding better. And so that's something that they've requested and we've gotten feedback on, and I think it's a really good idea. It's also an opportunity for us to reprioritize our projects now that we've kind of completed a number of them, to sort of reset to determine whether or not, for example, our LTFM plan, which you'll hear about, our 10-year plan, we'll come back to you in a couple months about. But do we have the right priorities? Are we putting our eggs into the right basket, so to speak, and are we partnering in a way that we think is most effective and efficient for our sites? Some future needs that we have, looking out. And I think, it's just really important for us to kind of be honest about some of the things that face us. Parking lots and driveways. We live in Minnesota, and you drive down the road and you see potholes every year. That's our reality, and it happens in our parking lots. So these are pretty big lifts. They can be very expensive projects because of just the sheer size that we have, but we work really hard to prioritize those and do as many of them as we can. Roof systems, as you know, we have 6 million square feet of space. We don't have 6 million square feet of roofs, but we have a lot of square feet of roofs. And they're aging. We do our very best to keep them going as best we can, but they also protect our assets, and they're tremendously important to us. So we're going to be facing significant costs moving forward on those. Our building envelopes and energy management. Just with regard to energy management, that's that part of specifically windows. We also try to do our best to see what's out there with regard to energy management associated with things like solar or geothermal. As you know, we have a couple of sites that we've experimented with solar. The geothermal is still, the jury's still out as to whether or not that's cost effective to make that big investment. But again, same sort of a thing. Technologies change. We continue to kind of evaluate those. Solar, we've kind of put the brakes on. Same sort of a thing. We think it's been kind of a cost-neutral program so far. If that improves down the road, then we'll look to expand that, but I think it was worth our while to test it out at some of our smaller sites. But we'll continue to keep an eye on that. Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, like your home or your car, those things they're running as well as they can for as long as they can, but they break down, right? So those are costs we're facing. We have some aging infrastructure there. And then our facilities, academic, athletic, and activity facilities such as classrooms, communal areas, stadiums, gyms, pools, and auditoriums. Same sort of a thing. We continue to upgrade those as we go through the system, but we have some that are quite old. And then safety and security. Doors, cameras, and surveillance, that remains a priority. I would say we've explored or done something major every year since I've been in this position, and we continue to do that. I just want to acknowledge the board members have expressed some interest in how we can be better with regard to things like weapons detection and those sorts of things. I can tell you that right now we're kind of exploring pretty seriously the possibility of some pilots there. The cost of some of those things have been prohibitive in the past, but there's different ways that different companies are kind of packaging those, and we're continuing to explore that. So I'll have more to come on that in the future. But anything we can do to try to achieve that simultaneous, safe, and welcoming environment, which is a challenge to do those two things, but we still believe that there's more to be done, and we can meet that standard better in the future. And I will say, just with regard to safety and security, I want to repeat, kind of our attitude about that is a multifaceted approach. It's not one thing, it's multiple things that we do to try to be sure that while our kids are in our schools, that they are as safe as possible. Finally, fiscal reality and responsibility, inflation, stagnant funding, and continue to be a challenge. And I don't think I'm saying anything new. We just had a presentation on something very similar to that. If there's any good that comes out of that, it forces us to continue to be as innovative as possible. So just simply saying that we can't do something because it's no longer affordable isn't really an option. It's something that we really believe in. Is the juice worth the squeeze? If you were to come to one of our Buildings and Grounds meetings, this is a quote from Ben Martinson that we talk about all the time. So there's lots of ideas out there. That's essentially what it boils down to is what we get out of this going to be worth the investment that we put into it, specific to student success, staff excellence, safety and security, and community experience. When we think about big projects like additions or new facilities, we feel that those are 50-year decisions. They're big decisions. You want to be sure that you do your very best that if you're going to put an investment in that you're investing those taxpayer dollars wisely. Renovations are about 20-year decisions, and basic projects that we do, maybe an office space or something like that, those are still 10-year decisions. So we always want to just be sure we're evaluating all these things as carefully as we possibly can. Again, folks, just awareness, the board knows this, but just the general public, almost every project that we do has multiple funding sources. That's the only way we can afford to do it, and so we're constantly monitoring those expenditures and those budget amounts to ensure we're not overspending in any particular area. Working closely with Michelle Vargas and her team. Sustainability and honoring commitments, we do our very best. If we tell a school we're going to do something, we try to follow through on that. What trips us up sometimes is something big fails and we have to readjust our priorities. And then a constant belief that we're stewards of taxpayer investments. We take that responsibility very seriously with all the decisions we make. So with that, I had a challenge from Mr. Simon to try to move this forward quickly, so I would take any comments or questions from school board members.
It was more than 10 minutes.
Sorry about that.
I know. Pretty close. Pretty close. Questions, comments?
Mine's quick.
Superintendent.
I want the board to, I think you'd believe this and know this, but when you got a $150 million LTFM plan, that's a 10-year rolling plan, things break. Things get moved around, that puzzle gets messed up and re-put together on a regular basis, and our team is always on time and on budget. So, and it only gets noticed when it doesn't work. So I want to commend Greg and the team for always being flexible and open to moving projects around and staying within the resources we have. So good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for your presentation and for all of your hard work and your team. Appreciate it. Well, we're an hour over, so I've epically failed the timeline tonight. It's time for the last item before we move into closed session. We have one tonight. It's board correspondence and communication. And this is our opportunity to share happenings in our community and report committee assignments or other items of interest. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share? Yes, Director DeShane.
Thank you for the opportunity to share. So just a couple of items to cover from the past few weeks. I enjoyed being a mystery guest reader at Champlin Brooklyn Park Academy, so a shout out to Miss Lynch's 5th grade class. They were wonderful and engaging students to interact with. Congratulations to all of our sports teams who have concluded their seasons. I got the chance to watch the Champlin Park girls basketball team finish out their season. I know we've got some other teams that are still in the running, so just really excited for all those students. I had the opportunity to attend the Special Education Advisory Committee. They had a guest speaker, parent resource night, and it was a really informative conversation about IEPs, 504 plans, accommodations, modifications, and I just want to thank that committee for putting together that very well-attended community event with some super helpful information. So, thank you.
Others? Director Arco?
I was just going to say there's another great reading night at Jefferson Elementary, so thank you for putting that on, and yeah, it's always a good time.
Any others? I'd like to share a couple of things. First of all, I also was another celebrity reader, and this time I hung out with Chuck E. Cheese. So, and I was informed by one of my own children that it's actually Charles Entertainment Cheese or something. Who knows? Anyway, that was the clarification for that. Today, we had the opportunity, both the superintendent and Director Duchesne, to attend the day at the Capitol. It was the Minnesota School Board Association in combination with the Minnesota Association of School Administrators. Got that acronym right. But we were able to visit a number of our persons, senators, and our House members to talk about our priorities. We took the priority card with, and we didn't get to everyone. We saw Senator Kroon, Senator Abler, we saw Representative Ray Rauer, and who else? Representative, is she a senator?
Yeah.
Yeah, Senator Kunesh as well. We missed, it's Representative Niska. Yeah, so that's a person we want to circle back with. But any conversations, if you connect with these folks to talk about our priorities, we really focused on comp ed, focused on cross-subsidy with special ed. Those were big priorities, and also then going more specifically into conversations about the K through 3 mandates and a number of mandates as well. I think that there's room for flexibility in places that they're going to try to move things, but there is not a lot of resource or money. But it's important to continue, as you know, if you know these folks and have those relationships, to talk about our priorities with them. And then thank them for the READ Act, and then indicated we still could use a little more money in that space as well. So it was a good meeting with all of them, so appreciated that opportunity. And also moving forward, I'm actually going with a team from the Minnesota School Board Association, not on the district, but through MSBA, in 2 days to a conference for the Consortium of State School Board Associates. So, and their mission is to really, it's a nonpartisan group. It used to be the National School Board Association that the district, that the state belonged to, and now they switched to another group called CASBA, and it's a nonpartisan national alliance dedicated to sharing resources and information to support, promote, and strengthen state school board associations. So I was invited to attend, and so I will be there in not where I thought I was going, so we'll just leave it at that. We do have any other things to share? I'm going to move into our next item, which is a closed session. We will conduct in closed session. The executive session will be closed pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.03 to discuss labor negotiations for education support professionals and all bargaining groups related to insurance program design and contributions. The closed session will be held in the Michael Sullivan Room. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to move to a closed session. Thank you. With a motion from Director Simon, is there a second? Thank you for the second. Motion by Director Simon, seconded by Director Arco. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. With 6 in favor and 0 opposed, we will move to closed session at this time into the Michael Sullivan Room. We will take a 5-minute break. The time right now is, as we wrap here, is recessed at 8:35. We'll meet at 8:40. Thank you.